Stone does not remember. Yet it still stands. Long before history had a name, massive structures rose from the earth with precision that defies simple explanation. They align with the sky, resist time, and whisper of minds far older, and perhaps far more advanced than we ever imagined. How did ancient people move what we struggle to lift today? What knowledge guided their hands? And why was it lost? As shadows stretch across these forgotten monuments, we begin to question not just our past, but our assumptions. Let's step closer and uncover what prehistoric structures may still be trying to tell us. Nestled along the winding banks of a river that glistens under the tropical sun, the remnants of Sungai Batu rise quietly from the dense landscape of northern Sumatra. From a distance, the sight seems almost ordinary: muddy earth, scattered stones, and the gentle murmur of water moving past. Yet, as you step closer, the contours of ancient structures emerge. Carefully laid stones forming walls, a network of channels carved into the ground, and massive hearths that hint at human activity stretching back millennia. The air feels heavy with the weight of time, as though each stone carries a memory of labor long vanished. Archaeologists have dated parts of the site to at least 2,500 years ago, positioning Sungai Batu among the oldest known civilizations in Southeast Asia. What makes it extraordinary, however, is not just its age, but its scale and apparent sophistication. Here we find evidence of industrial activity: furnaces capable of smelting iron, piles of slag that suggest organized production, and traces of trade networks that could have connected this port to distant lands. This was no simple village. It was a hub of commerce and craftsmanship, predating even some of the better-known regional empires. Yet the site refuses to yield all its secrets. The methods used to construct these structures remain partially obscure. How did ancient builders manage to organize such large-scale operations without written records or clear architectural blueprints? Some walls are aligned with uncanny precision, while certain channels hint at hydraulic engineering far beyond what we would expect for the period. Tools and techniques leave tantalizing clues, but never the full story. It is in these gaps, the silence between the stones, the questions that outnumber the answers, that Sungai Batu holds its fascination. Scholars have suggested practical explanations, that local communities harnessed available resources, that knowledge was passed orally, and that trial and error guided their construction. Others have pointed to the region's strategic location, along rivers that connect to the Malacca Strait, as evidence of a trading culture sophisticated enough to require large-scale iron production. Yet there is something undeniably mysterious about the site. Some stones appear quarried with care, yet their arrangement suggests symbolic or ritual significance. Could these structures have been designed with a deeper purpose in mind, one that intertwined commerce, community, and belief? Fringe theories, naturally, have arisen alongside conventional interpretations. Some suggest that the technological achievements of Sungai Batu's builders hint at lost knowledge, a level of understanding eclipsed by time. Others point to alignments that appear to mirror astronomical phenomena, implying an awareness of celestial patterns that seems at odds with the modest tools of the era. While these ideas remain speculative, they underscore an undeniable truth. Sungai Batu challenges our assumptions about human ingenuity and the passage of history. Walking among the remnants today, one can almost hear the echo of hammers striking iron, the murmur of boats gliding along the river, the chatter of a community that thrived in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. Yet, the further we dig, the more questions surface. Were these structures part of a broader, forgotten network of ports and settlements? Did the knowledge of their construction vanish entirely, or does it linger in ways we have yet to recognize? Every layer of soil, every carved stone, hints at answers that remain just out of reach. Sungai Batu does not offer its story readily. Instead, it invites reflection, a slow and patient investigation that blurs the line between history and mystery. As we examine the furnaces, the walls, the channels, and the scattered artifacts, we are reminded that human history is rarely linear, often more intricate than our records can capture. And so the question persists: what else lies hidden beneath the riverbanks and the earth, waiting for someone to uncover it, waiting to challenge what we think we know about the dawn of civilization in this corner of the world? From the bustling banks of Sungai Batu, our journey now takes us across continents and deserts to a far quieter, more secluded landscape. In the sun-baked expanses of northern Arabia, the sands hide secrets older than the cities that dot the horizon. Among these windswept plains lie the Khutm underground tombs, a labyrinth of stone chambers hewn deep into the earth, their entrances subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual traveler. Standing before them, the silence is profound, broken only by the whisper of wind across the dunes. There is a weight here, an ancient gravity that seems to press against time itself. At first glance, the tombs appear straightforward, rock-cut burial sites, the kind found across the region. Yet their scale and precision quickly suggest something beyond ordinary mortuary practices. Archaeologists estimate that these chambers date back at least 2 millennia, possibly earlier. The tombs are carved with an attention to structure and symmetry that seems remarkable given the era and the harshness of the surrounding environment. Some chambers are deep and complex, with corridors and alcoves branching off in unexpected directions. Others are simpler, yet each carries a design that is deliberate, purposeful. Scholars have identified parallels with nearby burial traditions, noting similarities in layout, orientation, and construction techniques. Many of the tombs align with celestial markers, hinting at a culture that observed the skies with care and intent. Inscriptions are rare, yet where they do exist, they provide glimpses of names and symbols whose meanings are only partially understood. The practical purpose is clear. These are resting places for the dead. Yet something about the overall arrangement invites questions that are harder to answer. How did builders carve these chambers so precisely into the hard sandstone without modern tools? The scale of some of the larger tombs, with ceilings supported by carefully cut columns, suggests a knowledge of weight distribution and stonework that surpasses what might be expected of a nomadic or semi-nomadic culture. Could it be that these people were part of a more organized society than the historical record shows? Some researchers speculate that the tombs may have served purposes beyond simple burial, ritual, astronomical observation, even social organization. Yet these ideas are tantalizingly incomplete, supported by hints rather than evidence. The tomb's remote locations only add to the mystery. Many are difficult to reach, hidden by dunes that shift with the wind, erasing traces of paths over decades and centuries. How many of these tombs remain undiscovered, buried beneath layers of sand? And why were they built in such secluded places? It is easy to imagine that the choice of location was deliberate, that the isolation was meant to protect sacred spaces, preserve knowledge, or perhaps mark territory in ways lost to history. Fringe theories have naturally emerged. Some suggest the tombs were part of a network of underground complexes, connected in ways that modern exploration has yet to confirm. Others point to the unusual precision of certain carvings, proposing that the builders possessed advanced knowledge or tools now forgotten. There are claims that the alignment of some chambers corresponds to particular stars or constellations, echoing ideas seen in distant cultures, raising the possibility of knowledge shared across great distances in the ancient world. While these interpretations remain speculative, they underscore a central truth. Khutm resists simple explanation. Exploring the tombs, one feels a curious intimacy with the past. Shadows fall across carved stone walls, Footsteps echo down corridors no one has walked for centuries, and the air feels cooler, heavier, as if the earth itself remembers those who once passed through. Each chamber seems to ask a quiet question. Who were these people, and what did they know? What compelled them to carve so deeply into the unforgiving rock, and what stories have been lost along the way? Unlike more accessible sites, Khutm offers no immediate answers, only fragments, hints of a culture that was complex, organized, and mindful of forces beyond the human scale. Its silent chambers invite reflection on what human ingenuity can achieve, even when shrouded in mystery. And yet, for all we have discovered, the tombs remain enigmatic. Hidden passages may lie beneath sands yet unshifted. Carvings may conceal meanings we cannot yet interpret. The deeper we look, the more we are reminded that history is never fully revealed, only glimpsed in fleeting traces. As the sun dips low over the desert, casting long shadows across the tomb entrances, one cannot help but wonder, what truths are buried here that even the most careful archaeology has yet to uncover? And perhaps, more intriguingly, what does the silence itself tell us about the people who built Khutm and the knowledge they took with them into eternity? From the quiet depths of Khutm's desert tombs, our journey carries us thousands of miles east to the lush, tropical lowlands of northern Cambodia. Here, the landscape is alive with the hum of insects and the dense fragrance of vegetation. Among the verdant greenery, ancient brick structures rise, their silhouettes softened by the creeping moss and vines that cling to every surface. This is Sambor Prei, a city that once thrived over a millennium ago, now a shadow of its former grandeur, yet pulsating with echoes of human ambition and ingenuity. At first glance, the site appears as a scattering of brick ruins amid forested hills. But closer inspection reveals a city carefully planned, with hundreds of temples, courtyards, and passageways. The bricks themselves are remarkable, fired in ways that have allowed them to endure centuries of monsoon rains and humidity, yet their origin remains only partially understood. Each temple is intricately laid out, often with a central sanctuary surrounded by smaller shrines, connected through pathways that suggest not just religious devotion, but a sophisticated understanding of urban design. Sambor Prei served as the capital of the Chenla kingdom in the 6th and 7th centuries, long before the rise of Angkor. Archaeologists have identified inscriptions in Sanskrit and Old Khmer, pointing to both political and spiritual significance. These writings tell us about kings and deities, about rituals and societal hierarchy. Yet, for all that we can read, much of the city's purpose remains elusive. Some temples are aligned in ways that seem intentional, perhaps reflecting astronomical observations or symbolic patterns whose meaning has been lost. How much of the city was built according to practical needs, and how much according to a vision of cosmic or spiritual order? What continues to fascinate researchers is not merely the sheer scale of Sambor Prei, but the craftsmanship of its bricks. Many are stamped with intricate markings, while others fit together with a precision that seems improbable given the technology of the era. How did builders achieve such uniformity across hundreds of structures? Some scholars suggest standardized molds and organized labor, yet questions linger about the techniques used to transport, fire, and assemble these materials. Could there have been methods now lost to time, or knowledge so specialized it vanished with the city itself? The temples themselves evoke a quiet mystery. The central sanctuaries are often surrounded by smaller chapels and ceremonial platforms, but the function of many remains speculative. Were some purely ceremonial, reserved for elite rituals? Were others intended as observatories, as some alignments appear to coincide with solstices and equinoxes? The careful placement of towers, walls, and courtyards suggests an awareness of geometry, orientation, and spatial relationships that hints at a sophisticated, almost scientific mindset. Yet, the records of the Chenla civilization provide only fragments of this knowledge, leaving us to wonder what may have guided the hands of the architects and masons who built here. Even more intriguing is the cultural context of Sambor Prei. Situated along important river routes, the city was likely a hub of trade, spiritual activity, and political power. But the civilization that built it left few clues about how its people lived, moved, and organized themselves beyond the monuments themselves. Some temples are clustered together, forming groups that might indicate social or religious divisions, while others stand alone, isolated and enigmatic. This pattern raises questions. Why were some sacred spaces centralized while others were intentionally set apart? Were these choices symbolic, practical, or both? Fringe theories have emerged alongside conventional scholarship. Some propose that the city was part of a network of ancient sites whose design principles were shared across Southeast Asia, possibly linked through trade, migration, or cultural exchange. Others point to unusual alignments and brick construction techniques as evidence of lost engineering knowledge, suggesting that Sambor Prei may represent an advanced understanding of material science and architecture that predates other known civilizations in the region. While these ideas are speculative, they highlight the gaps between what we know and what remains unexplained. Walking among the moss-covered walls and sunlit courtyards, one cannot help but feel a sense of continuity and mystery intertwined. The structures invite reflection, encouraging us to imagine the people who built them, the rituals performed within their chambers, and the vision that guided their construction. Each temple, each brick, is a fragment of a larger story, one that history has only partially revealed. And yet, despite centuries of study, much of Sambor Prei remains enigmatic, resisting full understanding. As shadows lengthen over the forest and the air hums with the distant calls of wildlife, the city seems to whisper its own quiet questions. How did a civilization so long ago achieve such enduring mastery over materials and design? What knowledge has been lost, buried in time alongside the stones themselves? And what might still lie hidden beneath the earth, or within the patterns of brick and temple, waiting for careful observation to reveal its secrets? In Sambor Prei, as with every ancient site we explore, the past is present, but never fully explained, leaving us to wonder and to search, with patience and awe. From the dense jungles of Cambodia, we now travel northeast across oceans and landscapes to the serene hills of Nara Prefecture, Japan. Here, amidst rolling greenery and the quiet hum of cicadas, lies a stone unlike any other. The Masuda-no-Iwafune, or Rock Ship of Masuda. From afar, it appears as a massive rectangular monolith set upon a flat plateau. Its surface is smooth yet weathered, its scale almost impossible to fully comprehend without standing beside it. At approximately 11 meters long, 8 meters wide, and 4.7 meters high, the sheer size of this carved stone is awe-inspiring and deeply enigmatic. The monolith is not natural. It has been meticulously hewn from solid granite. Its flat top features 2 deep, parallel grooves, carved with such precision that they remain a puzzle to modern engineers. Large holes punctuate the rock in ways that seem purposeful, yet their function remains unclear. Scholars have long debated the origin and purpose of the Iwafune. Unlike the megalithic tombs and temples of Southeast Asia, Masuda-no-Iwafune offers no inscriptions, no cultural markers that clearly indicate who built it, when, or why. Its form and context are silent, leaving only the stone itself to tell the story. Estimates suggest the megalith could date back to the Khutm period, or even earlier, yet its construction techniques remain a subject of debate. How did ancient people carve such a massive block with remarkable straight lines and smooth surfaces using the rudimentary tools of the time? Transporting a stone of this size would have required extraordinary coordination and effort. Was it dragged from a distant quarry, or is it carved in place? And if so, why was such effort expended on a solitary, enigmatic structure with no apparent practical function? Conventional explanations have often suggested ritual or ceremonial purposes. Some scholars theorize that the grooves and holes might have been used to anchor wooden structures, perhaps a platform or a ceremonial stage. Others propose that it could have functioned as an astronomical marker, with alignments pointing to solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial events. Yet despite detailed measurements and decades of observation, no consensus has emerged. The rock resists interpretation, its very presence inviting as many questions as answers. Even more perplexing is its location. Unlike a temple or burial site integrated into a larger settlement, Masuda-no-Iwafune stands in relative isolation, atop a plateau that is difficult to access. Why choose this particular location for such a labor-intensive project? Was it selected for symbolic reasons, for its view of the surrounding landscape, or perhaps for a ritual significance now lost to time? And why leave it without any accompanying artifacts, tools, or inscriptions that might explain its purpose? Fringe theories naturally gravitate toward the enigmatic. Some suggest that the Iwafune was part of a lost network of megaliths designed according to geometric or astronomical principles now forgotten. Others speculate that it may have been used as a giant sundial, a spiritual platform, or even as part of an unrecognized hydraulic or architectural system. Comparisons have been drawn to other megalithic sites across the world, from Europe to Southeast Asia, raising the possibility that these massive stones may represent a shared ancient understanding of stonework, mathematics, or cosmology, knowledge that transcended geography but left few traces. Approaching the monolith, one feels a curious mix of reverence and perplexity. The grooves are deep, precise, and symmetrical. The holes are evenly spaced, yet no one today can say why. Moss and lichens coat the rock, softening its edges, and the air carries the quiet sounds of the surrounding forest, masking the immense effort that went into its creation. Walking around it, one senses the same human impulse that inspired the builders of Sambor Prei, Sungai Batu, or Khutm. A desire to shape the earth, to leave behind a mark, a structure that communicates something essential about humanity. Yet the message is obscured by centuries of time. Masuda-no-Iwafune reminds us that human ingenuity is often paired with mystery. Its craftsmanship suggests a high level of knowledge, yet its function eludes explanation. Every measurement, every angle, every groove points to deliberate intent. Yet we are left to interpret that intent through our own imagination. Was it a spiritual site, a ceremonial stage, a monument of power, or something far more esoteric? Or did it serve multiple purposes, layered and complex, known only to those who created it? As sunlight shifts across the plateau, casting long shadows along the carved grooves, the monolith seems to quietly defy understanding. Unlike temples or tombs, it offers no narrative, no story beyond its form. And perhaps that is its greatest intrigue. Masuda-no-Iwafune is a question cast in stone, an enduring testament to the ingenuity and the mysteries of the past. What truths lie hidden within its silent granite body, and what secrets might remain undiscovered in the hills surrounding it? Standing here, one cannot help but wonder, and to feel, in the presence of such enduring craftsmanship, how much of human history remains veiled, waiting to be revealed. From the solitary granite plateau of Masuda-no-Iwafune in Japan, we now journey across oceans and continents, to the high Andes of Peru, where the air is thin and crisp, and the horizon stretches over jagged peaks and windswept valleys. Here, at over 4,000 meters above sea level, lies a landscape that is as enigmatic as it is breathtaking: the Marcahuasi stone formations. At first glance, it is a rugged expanse of weathered rock, a plateau carved by time itself. Yet among these stones are shapes that stir curiosity, even awe: towering monoliths, carved faces, and formations that seem to echo the contours of human and animal figures. The plateau is immense, dotted with over 3,000 unusual stones, many of which appear deliberate in their form. Some are rounded and smooth, others jagged and angular, yet patterns emerge as one walks among them. Faces peer from the rock, their features sometimes eerily precise, as if frozen in time, staring across the valleys at nothing in particular, or perhaps everything. There are figures that resemble llamas, humans, and even complex symbols whose meanings remain unknown. These formations have long drawn the attention of archaeologists, adventurers, and mystics alike, each attempting to decipher whether they are natural sculptures shaped by wind and erosion, or remnants of a forgotten civilization with extraordinary skill in stonework. Scientific studies suggest that the plateau itself is a volcanic formation, with centuries of wind, water, and frost sculpting its granite into dramatic shapes. Many geologists argue that natural erosion alone can create forms that resemble faces or animals, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. Yet, the sheer scale and concentration of some of the carvings defy easy explanation. Why do so many of the stones seem to echo recognizable shapes, often grouped in ways that suggest intention? And why would these shapes be located so far above the valleys, on a plateau that is difficult to access, exposed to the harsh Andean elements? Historical records provide limited insight. Local legends speak of the area as sacred, a place of pilgrimage and meditation. The indigenous peoples of the region have long regarded Marcahuasi as a spiritual center, imbued with energy and mystery. Explorers from the 20th century reported encountering intricate arrangements of stones that seemed to resemble altars or ceremonial platforms, though no definitive archaeological evidence has confirmed their use. The lack of inscriptions, artifacts, or tools associated with the site deepens the mystery, leaving interpretation largely to observation and conjecture. Some researchers suggest that the stones were deliberately carved by pre-Inca cultures, possibly as ritual markers or as representations of deities and cosmology. If this is the case, the precision required to shape such massive stones in a remote, high-altitude environment is remarkable. How did people transport and sculpt these rocks without the aid of modern tools? What knowledge guided their work, and why did they choose these particular forms and placements? Others argue that the formations may have been created over centuries, blending natural processes with human intervention, a collaboration between geology and ingenuity. Fringe theories abound, each adding to the allure of Marcahuasi. Some suggest that the plateau was a center of ancient astronomical observation, with certain stones aligned to solstices, equinoxes, or star patterns. Others speculate that the figures were intentionally sculpted to convey messages, warnings, or knowledge lost to time. Comparisons are often drawn between Marcahuasi and other megalithic sites worldwide, hinting at a shared understanding of geometry, symbolism, or even spiritual philosophy that transcends continents. While these theories remain speculative, they underscore the enduring fascination with a site that defies easy explanation. Walking among the stones, one is struck not only by their size, but by their presence. The wind whistles through crevices, and clouds drift low, casting shifting shadows that transform the landscape every hour. Some formations appear almost animate, their faces changing expression with the light and angle of observation. It is a place that invites contemplation, as though the plateau itself is a silent teacher, asking us to consider the nature of creation, perception, and human ingenuity. How much of what we see is intention, and how much is the Earth's artistry? Where does human skill end and natural forces begin? The mystery of Marcahuasi is amplified by its isolation. Unlike urban archaeological sites, there are no roads, settlements, or clear signs of infrastructure nearby. Access requires effort, and the harsh mountain environment has protected the stones from extensive modification over centuries. Yet this very seclusion preserves the enigma. The site remains almost exactly as it was encountered by those who first explored it, whether those explorers were ancient pilgrims, local communities, or natural processes shaping the land for millennia. Marcahuasi challenges our perception of what is natural and what is constructed, what is ancient and what is timeless. Its stones speak to human curiosity and the urge to leave a mark, yet they also confront us with the limits of our understanding. Were these figures carved by hands long forgotten, intended to record a culture's cosmology, or were they shaped over millennia by the elements themselves, imbued with meaning by those who later gazed upon them? Perhaps the truth is a combination, an intricate dialogue between humans and the landscape, one that we are only beginning to appreciate. As the sun dips behind the peaks, casting long shadows across the plateau, Marcahuasi seems to watch silently, inviting reflection. Every face, every animal, every unusual formation is both a question and an answer, a riddle left in stone. And as we stand here, surveying the plateau and its enigmatic artistry, one cannot help but wonder, how many other secrets are etched in the high places of the world, waiting for patient eyes and curious minds to uncover them? How much of human history and human creativity remains hidden in plain sight, disguised as the very earth beneath our feet? From the windswept heights of Marcahuasi, we descend into the fertile valleys of southern Peru, where the Andes begin to soften into plateaus and rolling hills. Among these landscapes lies Wari Pikillacta, an archaeological site that spreads across the plains near Cusco, offering a stark contrast to the natural grandeur of Marcahuasi. Here, instead of towering monoliths shaped by wind or time, we find walls of carefully cut and placed stones, rows of massive blocks forming enclosures, corridors, and plazas. Their precision is immediately evident, yet the purpose and methods of their construction remain shrouded in mystery. The blocks themselves are imposing. Made from andesite, they are unusually uniform in size and fit together with remarkable accuracy. In some areas, the stones are shaped to interlock without mortar, forming walls that have withstood centuries of seismic activity in one of the most earthquake-prone regions on Earth. The precision of their joints and the apparent understanding of structural stability speak to engineering knowledge that seems advanced for a culture existing over 1,000 years ago. Scholars date the site to approximately the 7th to 10th centuries CE, attributing its construction to the Wari civilization, predecessors to the later Inca Empire. Yet, even with this attribution, many questions remain. Why was Pikillacta constructed in this particular location, away from major water sources and on relatively flat terrain? The layout of the site is peculiar. The enclosures appear regimented, almost military in their organization, with long, narrow corridors, rectangular compounds, and areas that may have served administrative or ceremonial functions. Were these walls intended for defense, social control, or religious purposes? Or did they serve multiple functions, combining practical infrastructure with symbolic meaning? Archaeologists have made efforts to study the site systematically. Excavations reveal that the Wari carefully planned Pikillacta, likely using standardized blocks, labor organization, and architectural guidelines that allowed such precision. The scale of the site suggests a centralized authority capable of mobilizing and directing large workforces. But questions persist. How were the stones quarried, transported, and placed with such accuracy? How did the builders achieve such stability without cement or advanced machinery? The answers hint at sophisticated knowledge now lost, a mastery of stonework that the Wari may have perfected and passed down only partially to their successors. The geometric patterns of the blocks add another layer of intrigue. In some enclosures, the angles and orientations appear deliberate, suggesting symbolic or astronomical significance. Certain walls align with mountain peaks or sun paths, hinting at an awareness of celestial cycles. Could Pikillacta have functioned in part as a cosmological map or calendar? Were these alignments spiritual in nature, intended to connect the people to the heavens, or practical, aiding in agriculture and timekeeping? While evidence is scarce, the precision of placement leaves little doubt that the builders were both intentional and knowledgeable. Fringe theories have emerged alongside mainstream scholarship. Some propose that Wari Pikillacta represents an experiment in urban planning, an early precursor to later Inca cities such as Cusco, where the organization of space combined social, political, and spiritual imperatives. Others suggest that the uniformity of the blocks and their interlocking design indicate lost technology or knowledge of engineering principles that were never fully recorded. Comparisons are often drawn to other megalithic sites around the world, raising questions about whether ancient cultures shared insights into stonework, geometry, or architectural principles that modern researchers struggle to replicate. Walking among the blocks today, one is struck by the stillness of the site. The corridors echo faintly with the wind, and the scale of the enclosures evokes a sense of human ambition tempered by restraint. The walls rise above the earth, yet they also invite contemplation, as if the builders intended them not only as practical structures, but as statements, physical manifestations of power, organization, or belief. Every joint, every alignment, every carefully measured corner asks us to consider the intelligence and intention of the hands that shaped it. Despite centuries of study, Pikillacta remains enigmatic. There are no detailed records from its builders, no inscriptions that explain its exact purpose or design. Archaeologists and historians can reconstruct its likely functions, speculate about social hierarchies, and study the materials and techniques used, but the site ultimately defies complete understanding. What did the builders see in this location that compelled them to carve the landscape with such precision? What knowledge guided the placement of each block, and why was it ultimately abandoned, leaving only the stones as testimony to a civilization now gone? As sunlight stretches across the plains, casting long shadows between the rectangular enclosures, Wari Pikillacta seems to hold its secrets patiently. Each block, each corridor, each wall is both a question and a clue, challenging observers to look deeper into the ingenuity and intentions of the Wari civilization. And as we consider the site's scale, its precision, and the ingenuity it embodies, one cannot help but wonder how much of their knowledge was lost to time, and how many other mysteries lie buried in the stones of the Andes, waiting for those patient and curious enough to uncover them. From the high plains of the Andes, where the Wari shaped stone blocks into precise enclosures, we now travel across continents and oceans to the remote northern reaches of China's Shanxi province. Here, in the Loess Plateau, lie the ruins of Shimao, an ancient city whose walls rise from the earth like jagged silhouettes against the horizon. Unlike the carefully organized enclosures of Pikillacta, Shimao greets the observer with a scale that is almost overwhelming. Massive stone walls, vast defensive fortifications, and terraces carved into hillsides, stretching over an area of nearly 4 square kilometers. The city is both monumental and mysterious, a reminder of human ambition writ large in stone and earth. Walking along the remains of its walls, one is immediately struck by their size and sophistication. Some sections are over 10 meters thick and constructed from tightly fitted sandstone blocks, interspersed with rammed earth to provide stability. Towers and bastions punctuate the fortifications, standing like silent sentinels that have endured more than 4 millennia. Archaeologists estimate that Shimao dates to the late Neolithic period, around 2300 to 1800 BCE, making it one of the earliest and largest urban centers known in prehistoric China. Yet for all its monumental presence, much about the city remains unknown. Who built it, how, and why? Excavations have revealed a city that was clearly organized, with areas designated for habitation, craft production, and ritual activities. The terraces may have served as both fortifications and platforms for ceremonial structures, while the interior streets and residential compounds suggest a densely populated hierarchical society. Evidence of jade production, pottery, and other crafts points to a culture of considerable sophistication, capable of supporting skilled artisans and coordinating large-scale construction projects. But how a society in this period managed such engineering feats, moving massive stones, shaping walls, and constructing complex fortifications, is still a topic of debate. The design of Shimao also hints at symbolic or cosmological considerations. Certain walls and towers appear to align with distant peaks or cardinal directions, suggesting that the planners may have incorporated astronomical knowledge into the city's layout. Could these alignments have served ceremonial, navigational, or calendrical purposes? Or were they intended to convey power and authority, to impress both the inhabitants and visitors with the precision and scale of the construction? These questions linger because, unlike later civilizations, the Shimao people left no written records to explain their intentions. Fringe theories have arisen alongside scholarly interpretations, reflecting the city's enigmatic qualities. Some researchers propose that Shimao may have been a ritual center, its massive walls serving more symbolic than defensive purposes. Others suggest that the sheer scale of the city indicates a level of social organization and technological knowledge that challenges traditional narratives of Neolithic societies in China. Comparisons are occasionally drawn to other monumental sites worldwide, raising questions about whether there were shared principles of urban design, engineering, or cosmology that transcended regions and cultures, even in an era long before sustained contact between distant civilizations. The city's defensive features are particularly compelling. Massive stone embankments, deep moats, and complex gateways suggest a community concerned with security, yet archaeologists have found no evidence of large-scale warfare at the site. Was Shimao a fortress designed to deter invaders, or was it a display of power intended to impress and control the population within? Were the fortifications purely functional, or did they carry a ritual significance, delineating sacred or administrative spaces from the rest of the plateau? Each interpretation opens further questions about the social and cultural organization of the city's inhabitants. Walking along the terraces today, one can almost imagine the life of the city as it once existed. Traders moving through streets lined with stone walls, artisans working jade and pottery, and ceremonial gatherings taking place atop elevated platforms, all framed by a landscape both harsh and majestic. Yet the city, abandoned and reclaimed by nature, speaks primarily through absence. The missing records, the silent streets, the walls that endure long after the people have vanished. Shimao, in this way, communicates through what it withholds as much as through what remains. Even the construction techniques remain a source of fascination. Stones weighing several tons were cut and fitted with astonishing precision, and the coordination required to shape terraces and fortifications implies a centralized authority with both vision and practical knowledge. How did these Neolithic builders accomplish such feats without the tools, machines, or written instructions available to later civilizations? And why was the city eventually abandoned, leaving behind walls and terraces, but little else to mark the daily lives of its inhabitants. Shimao challenges our understanding of human capability and the rise of urban societies. It asks us to reconsider assumptions about what prehistoric people could achieve, how they organized themselves, and what values or beliefs guided their monumental efforts. The city is a reminder that even in times we consider ancient, humans were capable of extraordinary vision, combining engineering, social organization, and perhaps spiritual or symbolic insight into a single, enduring form. As the sun sets over the Lues Plateau, casting long shadows across the walls and terraces, Shimao seems to hold its secrets quietly, yet insistently. Every stone, every tower, every terrace is both a question and a clue, offering glimpses into a past that is both familiar and unknowable. And as we gaze across the city, imagining the people who once walked these streets, we are left with a lingering thought. How much of Shimao's story remains buried, waiting for patient eyes to uncover it, and what truths about human ingenuity and ancient knowledge might still lie hidden beneath its enduring walls? From the sprawling stone terraces of Shimao in northern China, where walls and fortifications speak of organized societies and long-lost knowledge, we journey southwest to the fertile banks of the Middle Euphrates in northern Syria. Here, the landscape is more subtle, its undulating plains marked by reeds, seasonal streams, and the remains of settlements that predate written history. Among these fields lie the ruins of Jerf el Ahmar, one of the earliest known communal sites in the Near East. Unlike the massive defensive walls of Shimao or the precise urban grids of Pikillacta, Jerf el Ahmar presents a quieter yet equally compelling mystery. Communal buildings, carefully constructed and deliberately aligned, that reveal hints of human society long before the rise of cities. At first glance, the site is modest, almost deceptively simple. Rectangular structures rise just above the ground, their walls built from mud brick and carefully packed earth. Yet even in their apparent simplicity, there is remarkable sophistication. Some of these buildings are unusually large for the period, far larger than the modest dwellings found in neighboring sites, suggesting a communal function. They are not ordinary homes. They are spaces designed to accommodate groups of people, possibly for rituals, social gatherings, or shared storage. The remains hint at gatherings that were significant to the people who built them, yet their exact purpose remains a mystery. Jerf el Ahmar dates to the pre-pottery Neolithic B period, roughly 9,000 to 8,500 years ago, a time when humans were transitioning from mobile hunter-gatherer lifestyles to more sedentary, agriculture-based societies. Excavations reveal carefully laid foundations, plastered walls, and evidence of repeated use and repair, indicating that these structures were maintained over generations. The communal buildings themselves suggest a level of social organization and cooperation that challenges assumptions about what societies of this era were capable of. How did groups of people coordinate labor, resources, and architectural knowledge to construct these spaces? What cultural or spiritual motivations guided their design? The layouts of the buildings provide further intrigue. Some are oriented along precise alignments, potentially reflecting environmental considerations such as sunlight, wind, or seasonal water flow. Others appear to have been positioned in relation to one another, forming clusters that may indicate social or ceremonial zoning. Within the walls, archaeologists have uncovered traces of hearths, plastered floors, and sometimes even symbolic motifs, though few artifacts remain to provide definitive context. Were these spaces purely functional, designed for work and daily life? Or did they serve a more symbolic or spiritual purpose, marking gatherings that connected people to their environment, their ancestors, or unseen forces? Fringe theories have emerged alongside conventional explanations, reflecting the enigmatic nature of Jerf el Ahmar. Some suggest that the communal buildings represent an early form of proto-temple or ritual center, places where the seeds of organized religion and social hierarchy were first planted. Others speculate that the architecture encodes knowledge of environmental cycles, astronomy, or communal governance that is now lost. While these ideas remain speculative, they underscore the sophistication and foresight embedded in the site's construction and the remarkable foresight of its builders. The materials themselves offer a quiet mystery. Mud brick, a seemingly humble medium, was carefully molded and baked to create walls that have endured millennia. Layers of plaster show evidence of repair and maintenance, suggesting both practical knowledge and an appreciation for durability. What motivated such care? Were these buildings maintained as sacred spaces, communal hubs, or symbols of emerging social cohesion? And if such effort was invested in communal structures, what does that reveal about the values and priorities of these early societies? Walking among the ruins today, the scale and arrangement of the buildings become apparent. The structures are modest compared to later monumental architecture, yet there is a profound sense of intentionality in their design. Paths and open spaces between buildings suggest controlled movement and shared spaces, hinting at a society negotiating cooperation, hierarchy, and ritual. The quiet expanse of the Euphrates Valley surrounds the site, lending it an atmosphere of calm and introspection. Here, the evidence of early communal life is tangible, yet it speaks in fragments, hints, traces, and echoes, rather than clear narratives. Despite decades of archaeological study, Jerf el Ahmar remains enigmatic. Its communal buildings reveal a society experimenting with permanence, cooperation, and shared life, yet the motivations behind their construction and arrangement are still unclear. How did these early communities conceive of space and social order? What beliefs or practices guided the orientation, size, and decoration of these structures? And what knowledge, lost over millennia, was embedded in the very earth and mud brick of the site? As the afternoon sun dips low across the plains, casting long shadows over the compact walls and plastered floors, Jerf el Ahmar invites contemplation. Each structure, each alignment, each layer of plaster is a clue to a society experimenting with permanence, cooperation, and identity at a time when humans were only beginning to settle in one place. Yet the full story remains just out of reach. The communal buildings speak to us quietly, reminding us that human ingenuity and social complexity extend far deeper into prehistory than we often recognize. And so, as we stand among these ancient mud brick walls, one cannot help but wonder what social, spiritual, or environmental wisdom lies buried in Jerf el Ahmar's structures. How much of humanity's earliest attempts at organized life, ritual, and cooperation remains hidden in the soil, waiting to be revealed by careful eyes and patient minds? In the quiet of this Syrian valley, the mysteries of early civilization linger, urging us to look closer, to question more deeply, and to consider how much of our own story has yet to be uncovered. From the mud brick communal buildings of Jerf el Ahmar, where early societies experimented with permanence and cooperation along the fertile banks of the Euphrates, we now journey to the dense, humid jungles of northern Colombia. Hidden among the steep slopes of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, above winding rivers and mist-shrouded valleys, lie the lower terraces of Ciudad, Perdida, the lost city. Emerging from centuries of overgrowth, the terraces are a testament to human ingenuity, carved meticulously into the mountainside. Each level is flat and precisely constructed, supported by retaining walls of local stone, creating a stepped city that blends seamlessly with the contours of the jungle. The first impression is one of awe. Despite centuries of erosion, collapse, and concealment beneath tropical vegetation, the terraces remain remarkably intact. They stretch in concentric layers, linked by stone staircases that climb steep inclines, and interspersed with pathways that suggest careful planning. The scale of construction is staggering. Thousands of stones moved, leveled, and stacked to form spaces for dwellings, plazas, and communal areas. Even in the lower terraces, where the foundations are less monumental than the city's central complex, the craftsmanship speaks of a sophisticated society with both technical skill and an intimate knowledge of the land. Archaeologists estimate that Ciudad Perdida was founded around the 9th century CE, likely by the Tairona civilization, and remained occupied for several centuries before abandonment. The terraces were designed not only for habitation but also for organization, social, ceremonial, and agricultural. Evidence suggests that crops were grown on certain terraces, while others served as communal gathering spaces, possibly for ritual, governance, or trade. Yet much about the site remains puzzling. How did the Tairona manage such an ambitious construction in such a steep and remote location, transporting stones from distant quarries and shaping them with precision using only basic tools? The layout of the terraces adds another layer of intrigue. They are arranged in patterns that appear deliberate, with platforms, plazas, and stairways aligned in ways that suggest both practical and symbolic planning. Some researchers propose that these alignments reflect cosmological knowledge, with plazas and central spaces positioned according to solar and lunar cycles, or oriented to mountain peaks considered sacred. Could these lower terraces have been designed not only as living spaces, but also as ceremonial landscapes, integrating the natural environment into the spiritual and social life of the Tairona people? Fringe theories, while speculative, have also emerged. Some suggest that Ciudad Perdida may have functioned as more than a city, a hub of astronomical observation, spiritual practice, or even as a repository of knowledge carefully concealed in the jungle. The precision of the terraces, the alignment of pathways, and the labor-intensive construction invite questions about what knowledge and organizational methods were employed, knowledge that, if it existed, disappeared alongside the city's decline. Others note the similarities between the site's engineering and terraces in other mountainous regions of the world, raising questions about parallel architectural traditions or the diffusion of construction principles across cultures. Walking among the lower terraces today, one is struck by their quiet grandeur. The air is thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth, while the sound of nearby rivers and distant wildlife fills the spaces between stone walls. Moss and vines creep across the retaining walls, softening the edges, yet accentuating the human effort that went into their creation. Each terrace, each platform, each carefully stacked stone is a testament to labor, skill, and vision. A vision that remains only partially understood. The lower terraces, though less monumental than the central complex, offer some of the clearest evidence of daily life, communal organization, and the careful integration of architecture with the steep, challenging landscape. Yet, the mysteries persist. Many of the stones and structures show signs of modification or repair over time, suggesting long-term habitation, adaptation, and care. What drove the Tairona to invest such effort in constructing these terraces, particularly in areas so difficult to reach? Were they motivated purely by practical needs, agriculture, shelter, defense? Or were these terraces imbued with cultural, spiritual, or symbolic meaning that has been lost to time? The answers are elusive, obscured by the jungle and the centuries of human and natural activity that have altered the site. The lower terraces also raise questions about social organization. Coordinating labor for terraces of this scale implies hierarchical or communal structures capable of planning, directing, and sustaining construction efforts. How was work organized, and what social or religious motivations underpinned it? Were these terraces a reflection of centralized authority, cooperative community effort, or both? And perhaps most intriguingly, what knowledge of engineering, agriculture, and environmental management allowed the Tairona to thrive in such steep tropical terrain. As the sun filters through dense foliage, casting dappled light across moss-covered stones, the lower terraces of Ciudad Perdida evoke both wonder and reflection. Each stairway, each wall, each leveled platform invites contemplation of human ingenuity and the mysteries of early civilizations. The site reminds us that urban planning, engineering, and social organization were not inventions of modernity. They are ancient impulses, manifested here with extraordinary skill, yet leaving us with questions that endure. And so, standing amid these terraces, one cannot help but ask, what knowledge and culture lie buried beneath the jungle's reclaiming roots? How many stories of daily life, ceremonial practice, and human creativity remain hidden within these stones, waiting to be discovered? In the quiet, green folds of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, Ciudad Perdida's lower terraces offer a glimpse into the past, yet they withhold their full secrets, leaving us to wonder at the ingenuity, mystery, and resilience of those who once called this place home. From the verdant, mist-laden terraces of Ciudad Perdida, where the Tairona carved stepped platforms into the mountainsides of northern Colombia, we now journey south to the arid, sun-baked valleys of northern Peru. Here, near the confluence of the Lambayeque and Túcume rivers, lies one of the largest known concentrations of pyramids in the Americas, the Túcume pyramid clusters. Stretching across a sprawling landscape of low hills and sandy plains, over 26 major pyramids rise, their adobe walls weathered yet enduring, hinting at civilizations that flourished long before the Spanish arrival. From a distance, they resemble subtle mounds in the desert, but closer inspection reveals monumental architecture meticulously planned and constructed, a city of pyramids, temples, and ceremonial platforms that speaks to a society of extraordinary sophistication. The scale of Túcume is immediately striking. Many of the pyramids rise 10 meters or more, their foundations laid with hundreds of thousands of adobe bricks, carefully sun-dried and stacked. The walls are remarkably resilient, designed to withstand both seasonal rains and seismic activity that occasionally shakes the region. Archaeologists attribute the site to multiple pre-Columbian cultures, including the Lambayeque, Sican, and Chimu civilizations, spanning from roughly 1100 CE to the early 15th century. Yet, despite the centuries of study, Túcume retains an aura of mystery. Why was such a vast complex built here, and what guided the decisions behind the construction, arrangement, and purpose of these monumental structures? Walking among the clusters, one senses the careful orchestration of space. Pyramids are arranged in terraces and plazas, often connected by broad pathways or ceremonial avenues. The largest structures appear to dominate their surroundings, suggesting not merely functional buildings but centers of ritual, governance, or social cohesion. Evidence indicates that these pyramids were used for ceremonial and religious purposes, likely as temples, burial sites, or offerings to deities. Yet the sheer number of mounds, many of which remain partially unexplored, suggests layers of activity and meaning we are only beginning to grasp. Could some have served as astronomical markers, oriented toward solstices or river paths, linking the spiritual life of the community to the natural and celestial worlds? The construction techniques themselves invite reflection. Adobe, a material that seems fragile, was employed with remarkable ingenuity. Walls were often reinforced with internal frameworks and buttresses, terraces were carefully graded to manage rainwater, and many pyramids incorporate hidden chambers, staircases, or platforms whose purposes remain uncertain. Transporting and shaping such quantities of material would have required coordinated labor, centralized planning, and knowledge of both engineering and human logistics. What methods did these societies employ, and what organizational structures allowed them to build at such a scale? And why did they select this precise valley, a landscape subject to both seasonal flooding and intense sun for such an ambitious architectural endeavor? Fringe interpretations, while speculative, highlight the enduring mystery of Túcume. Some suggest that the layout of the pyramid clusters may encode symbolic or cosmological knowledge, aligning with sacred mountains, rivers, or star systems. Others propose that Túcume represents a deliberately ordered ceremonial landscape designed to reflect societal hierarchy, spiritual beliefs, and territorial control simultaneously. Comparisons to other megalithic and monumental sites around the world raise tantalizing questions. Was there a shared understanding of geometry, architecture, and ritual across distant civilizations? Or is this a remarkable convergence of human ingenuity shaped independently by environmental and social needs? Despite the extensive research, much about daily life in Túcume remains obscure. While pottery, textiles, and burial goods have been recovered, they offer only fragmentary insight into the people who built, worshipped, and lived among these pyramids. Who were the artisans and laborers who molded the adobe bricks under the harsh sun? Who performed the rituals atop these terraces, and what beliefs guided them? And why, after centuries of use, were the pyramids eventually abandoned, leaving the structures to weather the desert winds in silence? Approaching the pyramids today, one feels the interplay of permanence and fragility. Adobe walls, though remarkably durable, show cracks and erosion, yet the overall forms endure, a testament to both human skill and the passage of time. Shadows stretch across the terraces, accentuating their geometric precision and the alignment of pathways, plazas, and ceremonial spaces. Each mound seems to ask questions rather than provide answers. Questions about human ambition, the role of ritual in shaping urban landscapes, and the knowledge that guided construction in an era long before written records documented daily life or architectural practice. Túcume also evokes reflection on the relationship between environment and ingenuity. Nestled in a valley where rivers, hills, and desert intersect, the site demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of topography, resource management, and urban planning. Terraces manage water flow, platforms provide vantage points, and pathways organize movement through the city in ways that balance utility, ritual, and aesthetics. Yet the rationale behind the placement of individual pyramids, the choice of their orientation, height, and proximity to one another, remains elusive. Was this an organic process, dictated by geography, or a deliberate reflection of social, spiritual, or cosmological order? As the sun sets over the Túcume Valley, casting a golden light across adobe walls and desert sands, the pyramids seem to radiate a quiet authority. They are monuments to human vision, labor, and belief, yet they withhold their full secrets. Every mound, every terrace, every pathway is both a question and a clue, speaking to civilizations whose knowledge, planning, and spirituality endure in the stones themselves. And as we stand among the clusters, surveying the sweeping scale of this lost ceremonial landscape, one cannot help but wonder what insights into ancient society, ritual, and ingenuity remain hidden within these pyramids. How much of Túcume's story is still buried, waiting for careful eyes and patient hands to uncover it? From the sun-baked valleys of Túcume, where adobe pyramids stretch across the Peruvian plains in a city of ceremonial and social order, we now journey north to the rugged, wind-swept mountains of the Caucasus. Here, amid rolling foothills and craggy peaks, lie the enigmatic torpedo-shaped dolmens, ancient stone structures whose form and purpose continue to perplex archaeologists and explorers alike. Unlike the pyramidal terraces of Túcume, these dolmens are compact, elongated, and meticulously crafted, rising from grassy slopes like silent stone vessels, oriented with a precision that hints at both intention and mystery. At first glance, the dolmens are deceptively simple. long, narrow stone chambers capped by massive slabs, some stretching over 3 meters in length, their sides and tops carefully fitted without mortar. Many are partially buried or overgrown, but their overall shape, smooth, elongated, almost torpedo-like, is unmistakable. Some appear to be aligned along ridgelines or oriented toward distant mountain peaks, while others cluster in small groups, forming miniature stone landscapes whose logic is not immediately clear. Their uniformity across the Caucasus region is remarkable, suggesting a shared cultural tradition, yet the absence of written records leaves their true purpose shrouded in time. Archaeologists have dated many of the dolmens to the Bronze Age, roughly 3000 to 1000 BCE, though exact timelines vary by region. Traditionally, they are thought to have served as burial chambers, housing the remains of individuals or small groups. Excavations have revealed skeletal remains, pottery fragments, and occasional metal objects. Yet many dolmens appear empty or contain evidence that hints at ceremonial or symbolic use rather than purely funerary function. The disparity between the elaborate construction and the modest contents raises questions. Why invest such extraordinary labor in these stones, and what cultural or spiritual principles guided their creation? The construction techniques themselves inspire both admiration and wonder. Massive stone slabs, some weighing several tons, were quarried, transported, and positioned with astounding precision, often over uneven terrain and across considerable distances. How Bronze Age communities accomplished this feat remains a subject of debate. Were simple tools and human labor alone sufficient, or does the uniformity and smoothness of these dolmens suggest techniques now lost to time? In some dolmens, the stones are fitted so closely that it is difficult to insert even a knife blade between them, a testament to craftsmanship that continues to challenge modern understanding. Orientation and placement of the dolmens add another layer of intrigue. Some align with solar or lunar paths, or with prominent geographic features, leading to speculation that these structures may have served as observatories, calendars, or ritual focal points. Could the torpedo shape itself hold symbolic significance, perhaps representing the journey of the soul, a protective vessel, or an abstract cosmological principle? Theories abound, ranging from the practical, storage of the deceased, protection of remains, to the spiritual or ceremonial. Yet, in the absence of inscriptions or explanatory records, we are left to interpret form and placement, allowing the mystery to speak for itself. Fringe interpretations have further expanded the sense of wonder. Some researchers propose that the dolmen's elongated shapes might reflect advanced knowledge of geometry, resonance, or even acoustics, hinting at purposes beyond the purely funerary. Others draw comparisons with megalithic traditions in Europe, India, and Central Asia, raising tantalizing questions about whether distant cultures independently developed similar architectural forms, or whether knowledge was transmitted across continents in ways we do not yet understand. The torpedo-shaped dolmens, like many ancient structures, invite questions that straddle the line between the practical and the enigmatic, between engineering and symbolism. Walking among the dolmens today, one is struck by the quiet authority of these stone chambers. The wind whispers across the slopes, carrying the scent of grass, earth, and distant forests. Each dolmen, elongated and precise, exudes an almost sculptural quality, standing as both a testament to human labor and a challenge to interpretation. Shadows shift across the smooth stone surfaces, accentuating angles and edges, suggesting design choices that are deliberate rather than accidental. Every orientation, every placement, every carefully chosen slab asks us to consider not just how they were built, but why and what the builders intended to convey. Despite centuries of study, these structures remain mysterious. Even when skeletal remains or artifacts are discovered, they often raise as many questions as they answer. Who were the people who created these dolmens? And why did they repeat this form across vast stretches of the Caucasus? What rituals or beliefs were associated with their use? And what knowledge, whether technical, astronomical, or symbolic, guided their construction? Knowledge that seems lost to time, preserved only in the stones themselves. As the sun dips behind the jagged peaks of the Caucasus, casting long shadows across the torpedo-shaped dolmens, the sight exudes a profound stillness. The stones endure, unyielding, holding the memory of human endeavor across millennia. Each dolmen is a question in stone, a fragment of history that resists easy answers, inviting us to contemplate the ingenuity, belief, and mystery of the people who raised them. And as we stand among these ancient monuments, tracing the outlines of their elongated forms against the horizon, one cannot help but wonder, what secrets of early engineering, ritual, and human understanding remain hidden within these dolmens, and how many more mysteries lie quietly waiting in the remote corners of the world? From the rugged peaks of the Caucasus, where torpedo-shaped dolmens stand as silent witnesses to Bronze Age ingenuity, we now cross the Mediterranean Sea to the Balearic island of Minorca. Here, perched on sun-drenched hills and overlooking sweeping plains, lies the Torre den Galmés Talaiotic complex, one of the most remarkable and enigmatic prehistoric sites in Europe. The first impression is immediately striking. Massive stone towers, circular enclosures, and labyrinthine walls rise from the rocky terrain, blending naturally with the landscape, yet radiating a sense of deliberate design and social intent. The complex spreads across several hectares, perched strategically to command views of surrounding valleys, the sea in the distance, and neighboring hills. Its central feature is the Talaiotic, a towering stone structure of cylindrical or truncated conical form, constructed from enormous boulders carefully fitted without mortar. Surrounding these talaiots are clusters of circular stone huts, communal plazas, and fortified walls, all interconnected by narrow pathways that guide movement through the complex. The precision of the construction is striking, particularly considering that it predates the use of iron tools on the island and relies almost entirely on human labor and ingenuity. Archaeological evidence dates the site to the Talaiotic period, roughly 1000 to 500 BCE, a time when the Balearic Islands were home to a distinctive culture characterized by megalithic construction. Excavations have revealed domestic spaces, storage areas, and ceremonial enclosures, indicating that Torre den Galmés was not merely a settlement, but a thriving, organized community. The talaiots themselves are thought to have served multiple functions: observation points, defensive structures, or centers of communal gathering. Yet, despite decades of study, their exact purpose remains elusive. Why were these towering structures built with such labor-intensive precision, and how did their builders achieve such architectural consistency across the complex? The layout of Torre den Galmés also hints at a sophisticated understanding of space and society. Circular huts are grouped in clusters, suggesting family or clan units, while plazas and open areas indicate communal or ritual functions. The talaiots, in turn, dominate the landscape, perhaps serving as symbols of power, authority, or spiritual significance. Certain walls and enclosures appear deliberately oriented to natural features, including the rising and setting sun on solstices, echoing practices observed in other prehistoric societies around the world. Could these alignments reflect an astronomical awareness, a ritual calendar, or even a form of communication across the landscape? The answers remain uncertain, obscured by time, erosion, and the absence of written records. Construction techniques further deepen the mystery. Massive stones, some weighing several tons, were transported and carefully positioned using only simple tools, ingenuity, and collective effort. Many stones are shaped to interlock with remarkable precision, creating stability that has allowed the towers and walls to endure for over 2 millennia. How did the Talaiotic people plan and coordinate such labor-intensive projects? What knowledge of engineering, weight distribution, and masonry did they possess? Knowledge that seems advanced for a culture often assumed to be rudimentary. And why, after centuries of occupation, were these structures eventually abandoned, leaving only stone skeletons of a once thriving society? Fringe interpretations have long fascinated scholars and enthusiasts alike. Some suggest that the Talaiots may have functioned as ceremonial or ritual centers, with the surrounding enclosures forming a symbolic landscape representing cosmology, social hierarchy, or spiritual beliefs. Others speculate that the complex may have served defensive or administrative purposes, projecting authority across the surrounding territory. Comparisons with other megalithic sites in the western Mediterranean, including Sardinia and Corsica, raise tantalizing questions. Was there shared knowledge of construction, social organization, or ritual across islands, or did these cultures independently develop similar architectural forms? The torpedo-shaped dolmens of the Caucasus and the Talaiots of Minorca, separated by continents and millennia, invite us to consider the universality of human ingenuity and the mysteries it leaves behind. Walking through the site today, the scale and sophistication of Torre den Galmés become tangible. The pathways between circular huts are worn into the earth, leading to central plazas that would have hosted gatherings, feasts, or ceremonies. Talaiots rise above the village, their massive stones glowing gold in the afternoon sun, casting long shadows that accentuate their enduring presence. Moss, lichen, and wind-weathered surfaces soften the edges of the walls, yet their structure remains imposing, a testament to centuries of human labor, vision, and social coordination. Each stone, each wall, each tower is both a record and a question, inviting reflection on who built this complex and why. Despite extensive study, Torre den Galmés remains enigmatic. The motives behind its construction, the societal structures it supported, and the knowledge embedded in its stones are only partially understood. Was it a hub of ceremonial life, a fortress, a social center, or some combination of all three? How did the Talaiotic people conceive of space, movement, and community in ways that allowed such a large and cohesive complex to emerge? And what other mysteries might remain hidden within the walls, pathways, and talaiots, waiting to be uncovered by future generations? As the sun sets over Minorca, illuminating the talaiots and circular enclosures in warm amber light, Torre den Galmés seems to watch silently across the plains and hills below. It endures as both monument and mystery, an enduring testament to human creativity, planning, and ambition. Standing among the stone walls, pathways, and towers, one is left with a profound sense of wonder. What knowledge and stories are still concealed within this ancient complex, and how much of the Talaiotic civilization's life, ritual, and wisdom has yet to be revealed? From the sun-drenched talaiots and circular enclosures of Minorca, where the Talaiotic people shaped stone and space to reflect community, ritual, and observation, we journey back across the ocean to the arid coastal plains of northern Peru. Here, in the vast Moche Valley near modern-day Trujillo, lies Chan, the sprawling capital of the Chimu civilization. At first glance, the site appears as a labyrinth of adobe walls, their soft golden hues blending seamlessly with the desert landscape. Yet closer inspection reveals an astonishingly complex network of inner compounds, carefully organized plazas, ceremonial spaces, and residential quarters, each built with meticulous precision, revealing a society of immense sophistication and control. The inner compounds of Chan are architectural marvels. Constructed almost entirely from adobe brick, the walls rise several meters high, enclosing plazas, courtyards, and narrow corridors. Some enclosures stretch hundreds of meters, their walls punctuated by intricately carved friezes depicting fish, birds, geometric patterns, and abstract motifs. These carvings are more than decoration. They are statements of power, symbolism, and cultural identity encoded in the very material of the city. Each compound is a self-contained unit, yet together they form a cohesive urban landscape, suggesting careful planning, centralized authority, and a society deeply conscious of hierarchy and ritual. Archaeologists estimate that Chan Chan was constructed between the 9th and 15th centuries CE, reaching its peak under the Chimu dynasty. The inner compounds are thought to have housed the elite, rulers, priests, and administrators, while also serving as centers for ceremony, storage, and governance. Yet many questions remain. How were the compounds constructed with such precision in a region prone to earthquakes and flooding? How was labor organized to move and mold millions of adobe bricks? And how did the Chimu ensure structural stability in a material that is vulnerable to erosion? These questions point to knowledge and techniques that were advanced, yet largely undocumented, leaving us to marvel at the ingenuity required to build an entire city of earthen walls capable of enduring centuries. The layout of the inner compounds is particularly compelling. Each enclosure seems deliberately oriented and arranged to facilitate both practical function and ceremonial significance. Narrow corridors channel movement through the compounds, perhaps to control access or orchestrate processions, while open plazas suggest spaces for gatherings, rituals, or observation. Water channels, canals, and storage pits indicate an intimate understanding of resource management, integrating daily life with agricultural planning and environmental adaptation. The precision of these systems suggests a society not only capable of monumental architecture, but also deeply attuned to its environment, able to shape it in ways that reinforced social and spiritual order. Yet Chan Chan also holds mysteries that challenge straightforward explanation. Many compounds appear almost identical, while others differ subtly, as though coded with information about rank, function, or ceremonial purpose. Some structures include secret rooms or elevated platforms whose purpose remains obscure. Archaeologists and historians debate the significance of these variations. Were they purely functional, social, symbolic, or a combination of all three? And why did the Chimu choose adobe, a material requiring constant maintenance, for the construction of their monumental inner compounds, knowing the vulnerability of the desert climate and occasional rains? The decisions embedded in these walls suggest knowledge, foresight, and perhaps even ritual intent that remains partially beyond our grasp. Fringe interpretations have added to the site's aura of mystery. Some researchers propose that the inner compounds functioned as centers of astronomical or calendrical observation, aligning with solstices, river courses, or other natural features. Others suggest that the intricacy of layout, repetition of forms, and enclosed spaces reflect a sophisticated psychological or social design intended to shape behavior, reinforce hierarchy, or channel ritual experience. Comparisons with other monumental sites worldwide, from Túcume in Peru to Talaiotic Minorca, raise provocative questions about the universality of human approaches to social organization, ritual, and urban planning. Did distant societies independently develop similar principles of spatial order, or are we glimpsing a shared intuition in the way humans have historically shaped their environments? Walking through the inner compounds today, the scale and intricacy of Chan Chan are overwhelming. Sunlight filters across high adobe walls, illuminating intricate friezes carved with fish, waves, and abstract patterns that speak to a society intimately connected to the sea and river. Narrow corridors guide the eye from plaza to plaza, courtyard to courtyard, revealing a carefully orchestrated rhythm of spaces, each with its own function, yet part of a larger urban narrative. Even centuries of erosion and human disruption cannot entirely conceal the intention, precision, and sophistication embedded in the architecture. Yet for all its grandeur, Chan Chan's inner compounds remain enigmatic. While excavation and study provide insight into daily life, ritual, and urban design, they cannot fully convey the knowledge, intentions, and belief systems of the Chimu people. What inspired the repeated forms, the alignment of corridors, and the specific designs of each compound? How much of the society's ritual, administrative, and ceremonial life is lost to history, preserved only in the shapes, carvings, and arrangements of the walls themselves? And, perhaps most hauntingly, what secrets remain buried beneath layers of sand and debris, waiting for patient eyes to uncover them? As the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the plazas and corridors, the inner compounds of Chan Chan exude a quiet majesty. They are both enduring monuments and unsolved riddles, speaking of human ingenuity, vision, and social complexity, while leaving many questions unanswered. Standing amid these adobe walls, one is struck by the combination of permanence and fragility, creativity and mystery. And as we trace the pathways and terraces of this lost city, we are left to wonder, what knowledge of urban planning, social organization, and ritual symbolism lies hidden within the stones? How much of the Chimu civilization's genius remains obscured by time, waiting to be revealed by those patient enough to listen to the whispers of the walls? From the sprawling adobe inner compounds of Chan Chan, where the Chimu shaped walls, plazas, and corridors to reflect both power and ritual, we now travel to the remote interior of New Zealand's North Island. Hidden deep within the rugged Kaimanawa ranges lies a formation that has puzzled explorers, historians, and geologists for decades: the Kaimanawa Wall. At first glance, it appears to be a series of massive, angular stones, arranged in what seems almost like a constructed barrier, stretching across a ridgeline and blending with the surrounding forested hills. Its very presence in such an isolated, steep, and rugged landscape invites both wonder and skepticism. The wall is striking in its geometry. Large blocks of andesite, some weighing several tons, sit stacked and aligned with an apparent regularity, their flat faces and sharp edges giving the impression of deliberate construction. Sections appear to form right angles or linear sequences, as though part of a longer structure once extended across the ridge. Weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and frost, the stones are coated with moss and lichen, softening their edges but not obscuring the sense of order. Standing before it, one is compelled to ask, was this the work of natural geological forces, or did human hands intervene, shaping these stones with purpose and precision? Geologists often argue that the wall is a natural formation, the result of jointing and fracturing within the volcanic rock, processes that can create angular blocks and apparent alignments. Indeed, the Kaimanawa ranges are known for their rugged volcanic geology, with cliffs, ridges, and fissures forming over millennia. Yet, despite these natural explanations, the regularity and alignment of certain sections raise questions. How could erosion, fracturing, and other natural processes produce sequences of blocks that seem to fit together, in some places forming terraces or perpendicular faces suggestive of human planning? Adding to the mystery is the remote and inaccessible location of the wall. The Kaimanawa ranges are steep, densely forested, and difficult to traverse, making large-scale construction, if it were indeed human-made, an extraordinary feat. How could early settlers, with rudimentary tools and minimal technology, move and stack stones of such size in such a rugged environment? Some researchers speculate that if humans were involved, it would have required coordinated labor, sophisticated understanding of leverage, and perhaps even ceremonial or strategic motivation strong enough to justify the enormous effort. But if the wall is natural, why does it resemble human construction so closely? Explorers and enthusiasts have long noted features that seem anomalous. Certain stones appear shaped, their surfaces unusually flat, while others suggest the presence of terraces or platforms. Small cavities or depressions in the rock have been interpreted by some as remnants of steps, post holes, or tool marks. Yet each interpretation is contested, and the lack of artifacts or definitive evidence of human activity leaves the question unresolved. Are we witnessing the occasional illusions our minds create when pattern-seeking confronts irregularity, or is there a deeper story hidden in the stones? Fringe theories have emerged, fueled by the wall's isolation and striking geometry. Some propose that it may have been a defensive structure, a territorial marker, or even a ceremonial site predating known settlement in the region. Others suggest connections to ancient, undocumented civilizations, long erased from history and memory. While these ideas remain speculative, they reflect the persistent allure of the wall, its ability to suggest design, intent, and history without revealing clear answers. The Kaimanawa Wall challenges assumptions about what ancient societies could accomplish and how we interpret landscapes that straddle the line between natural and human-made. Visiting the site today, the wall exudes a quiet, almost eerie authority. The forest rises around it, muffling sound and isolating the formation from the modern world. Light filters through the canopy, illuminating the angular faces of the stones and casting deep shadows into crevices and corners. Standing amid the blocks, one becomes acutely aware of scale, effort, and time. Whether shaped by geological forces or human hands, these stones carry a weight beyond their physical mass, a weight of mystery, endurance, and unanswered questions. Despite repeated surveys and study, the Kaimanawa Wall continues to defy definitive explanation. How did the stones come to rest in this precise arrangement, and was it the work of natural processes, human hands, or some combination of both? What purpose, if any, did it serve for those who might have shaped it, or for the landscape itself, silently recording millennia of geological history? And perhaps most intriguingly, what other formations, hidden in remote ranges or obscured by vegetation, might similarly blur the line between human construction and natural formation, waiting to be discovered? As the sun dips behind the ridges, casting long shadows across the moss-covered stones, the Kaimanawa Wall seems to hold its secrets tightly, whispering across time to those willing to explore and contemplate. Each angle, each crack, each shadowed crevice invites reflection, urging us to question assumptions, to balance skepticism with wonder, and to remain open to the possibility that even the most remote and rugged landscapes may bear traces of knowledge, labor, and intention that have survived for millennia. Standing before it, one is left with a lingering thought. How much of the wall's story is hidden, and how many other mysteries, quietly preserved by nature and time, await those who seek them with patience, care, and curiosity. From the isolated stone walls and terraces of Port Bajin, where geometric precision meets the stark isolation of Siberia, we now travel to the rolling hills and misted glens of northeastern Scotland. Here, on the outskirts of Inverness, stands the enigmatic Balnuaran of Clava, a Bronze Age cemetery and stone circle complex that has captivated archaeologists, historians, and visitors for centuries. Nestled in a gentle rise overlooking the River Nairn, the site is composed of carefully arranged circular cairns, standing stones, and concentric rings of rubble and rock, each element seemingly deliberate, yet still resisting full understanding. At first glance, Balnuaran of Clava is deceptively simple. The largest cairns are circular mounds of carefully stacked stones, surrounded by rings of smaller standing stones and rubble. Some stones are massive, their weight and placement suggesting careful planning and concerted effort, while others are smaller, positioned with subtle precision, creating patterns that hint at symbolic or astronomical alignment. The stone circles and cairns appear to communicate a vision of order within the natural landscape, their arrangement echoing a deep understanding of space, ritual, and possibly cosmology. Yet for all their careful construction, the purpose of the complex remains elusive, leaving observers to ponder both function and meaning. Archaeologists date Balnuaran of Clava to around 2500 to 1500 BCE, making it contemporaneous with many other remarkable megalithic sites across Europe. Excavations have revealed cremated remains within the cairns, suggesting that the site served as a cemetery, but the arrangement of stones raises questions far beyond the mere burial of the dead. Some cairns are ringed by standing stones leaning slightly in a clockwise direction, a subtle inclination that may reflect solar, lunar, or seasonal cycles. Could these alignments indicate a ritual calendar, guiding ceremonies in accordance with celestial movements? Or do they encode symbolic meaning tied to life, death, and the journey of the soul? Walking among the cairns, one is struck by the meticulous care of the builders. Stones vary in size, shape, and placement, yet together form concentric rings, defined boundaries, and a sense of geometric harmony. Pathways between the circles suggest guided movement, perhaps choreographed for processions, ritual observance, or ceremonial performance. The cairns themselves often incorporate passages or chambers, some oriented toward specific points on the horizon. Were these passages designed to focus sunlight or moonlight at particular times of year, illuminating the cremated remains within? Or were they symbolic thresholds, bridging the world of the living and the world of the dead? The precision of construction is remarkable, especially considering the Bronze Age context. Stones weighing several tons were transported, shaped, and erected with tools far less sophisticated than those available in later civilizations. The effort required suggests a society capable of organization, labor coordination, and shared cultural or spiritual purpose. Yet the choice of site, on a gentle hilltop rather than a defensible or resource-rich location, implies that ritual and symbolic significance may have been as important as practical considerations. Why here, among these rolling fields, overlooking a river? What invisible forces, cultural, spiritual, or environmental, drove the selection of this precise location? Fringe theories have long added to the allure of Balnuaran of Clava. Some researchers suggest that the site functioned as an astronomical observatory, a calendar to mark solstices and equinoxes, or a ceremonial nexus linking multiple sacred landscapes across Scotland. Others propose connections to broader megalithic traditions throughout Europe, drawing parallels between the Balnuaran rings, the stone circles of Brittany, and the ceremonial sites of the Orkneys. Could knowledge of geometry, cosmology, and ritual practice have diffused across cultures, leaving traces in stone? Or are these similarities coincidental, evidence of shared human inclinations toward order, alignment, and symbolic space? Today, the site exudes a quiet, haunting presence. Grass sweeps across low mounds, wind rustles through nearby trees, and the stones themselves cast long, leaning shadows across the earth. Standing within the circles, it is easy to imagine the ceremonies that may have taken place. Processions winding between cairns, smoke rising from ritual fires, the sound of spoken or sung words echoing across the glen. Yet these are speculations, glimpses into a past that left no written record, only the silent testimony of stone. Every cairn, every ring, every inclined monolith is simultaneously familiar and unknowable, a human imprint preserved across millennia yet resistant to definitive interpretation. Despite extensive archaeological study, the full significance of Balnuaran of Clava remains a mystery. Was it purely a cemetery, a ceremonial center, an observatory, or some combination of all three? How did its builders conceive of the relationships between earth, stone, sky, and human experience? And what knowledge, lost to time, enabled them to shape space with such subtlety, precision, and resonance? These questions linger, reminding us that even in the relatively small scale of this complex human ingenuity, ritual and vision can leave enduring traces that both inform and perplex. As the sun sets over the glen, casting a soft golden light across leaning monoliths and concentric stone rings, Balnuaran of Clava appears as both monument and enigma. Its cairns and circles endure in quiet testimony to a Bronze Age society that shaped earth and stone to reflect belief, ritual, and understanding, yet withheld its full meaning. Standing among the stones, one is left with a profound sense of wonder. What knowledge, ceremonies, and stories are encoded within these ancient walls? How much remains hidden beneath the mounds, and how many secrets of human ingenuity, spirituality, and cosmology still lie waiting, quietly preserved, for patient eyes and careful hands to uncover? From the silent stone rings of Balnuaran of Clava, where cairns and leaning monoliths whisper of Bronze Age ritual and astronomical awareness, we now journey east to the rugged landscapes of North Macedonia. Perched atop a rocky plateau overlooking the Stip Valley, Kokino rises abruptly from the surrounding hills, a site where earth and sky seem to meet in a dramatic panorama. It is here, amid boulders weathered by millennia of wind and sun, that the Kokino megalithic observatory reveals itself, not as a singular structure, but as an arrangement of natural and shaped stones that suggest deliberate observation of the heavens. At first glance, Kokino appears almost sculpted by nature. Massive granite outcrops rise in irregular formations, interspersed with smaller stones that create natural platforms and steps. But closer inspection reveals patterns, alignments, and features that hint at human intervention. Carved seats, sun marks, and rock depressions positioned with apparent intent. From these elevated vantage points, the sun rises and sets in ways that align precisely with certain stones during solstices and equinoxes, while lunar cycles can also be traced along sight lines between boulders. Standing here, one cannot help but feel that this rocky promontory served as more than mere shelter. It was a place of observation, calculation, and ritual. Archaeological studies date Kokino to the Bronze Age, around 1800 BCE, making it one of the oldest known megalithic observatories in Europe. Carbon dating of associated artifacts and charcoal fragments suggests repeated human activity over centuries, possibly generations of astronomers, priests, or community leaders who returned to this vantage point to mark the passage of time. Yet, despite decades of study, the site continues to challenge researchers. How, with only rudimentary tools, did its builders shape the stones to align so accurately with solar and lunar events? And how much knowledge, now lost, was required to conceptualize, mark, and measure these celestial cycles so precisely? The features of Kokino are subtle, almost understated, yet their precision is striking. Certain stones appear deliberately flattened or carved to serve as markers for sunrise or sunset on key dates. Other rocks form viewing platforms where one could sit or stand to track shadows or alignments. Pathways and terraces, shaped from bedrock itself, suggest an intimate understanding of topography and sightlines. The builders of Kokino were not merely placing stones. They were reading the landscape, integrating topography, sky, and human perception into a coherent system. Could this have been a calendar, a ceremonial observatory, or even a training ground for early astronomers? The evidence allows for multiple interpretations, each equally compelling and enigmatic. The surrounding landscape adds another dimension to the mystery. Kokino overlooks valleys, rivers, and distant peaks, offering panoramic views that would have been essential for both observation and ritual. The plateau itself is isolated, accessible only by steep paths that amplify its sense of sacred or special status. Why choose this particular site, among so many hills and plateaus in the region? Was it the horizon line, the elevation, or the interplay of light and shadow that made this location uniquely suited for observing the heavens? And why did successive generations invest effort in maintaining and marking it, leaving a layered legacy of stone and sky? Fringe interpretations have emerged alongside mainstream research. Some propose that Kokino served as a ceremonial center, linking solar and lunar cycles to agricultural or religious events. Others suggest it may have functioned as a proto-scientific observatory, allowing its users to predict seasonal change, ritual timing, or even eclipses. Comparisons with other megalithic observatories, Stonehenge in England, Menastra in Malta, raise provocative questions. Was there knowledge diffusion across Bronze Age Europe, or did these cultures independently arrive at similar solutions for measuring and marking celestial cycles? Kokino challenges assumptions about prehistoric knowledge and the sophistication of early societies, forcing us to reconsider the boundaries between ritual, observation, and science. Visiting the site today, the combination of natural grandeur and human intervention is mesmerizing. Sunlight illuminates carved depressions in the granite, casting shadows that accentuate angles and lines, while the wind whistles across the plateau, carrying the faint scent of grass and earth. Every stone, every alignment, every flattened platform invites the observer to consider intention, knowledge, and patience. Even centuries of erosion and weathering have not erased the deliberate character of the site. Its purpose may remain partially hidden, but its presence continues to command attention and respect. Despite careful study, Kokino remains enigmatic. Were these stones primarily functional, serving as an astronomical tool, or were they symbolic, intended to connect humans with cycles of nature and cosmos? Did the observatory serve a community, a priesthood, or a ruling elite? And how much more knowledge, astronomical, ritualistic, or technical, might have been encoded here, only to be lost with time? Each alignment, each terrace, and each carved rock is a question in stone, silently inviting exploration, interpretation, and wonder. As the sun sets over the Stip Valley, casting long shadows across granite outcrops and ancient pathways, Kokino exudes a quiet majesty. It stands as a monument to human curiosity, perception, and skill, bridging earth and sky in a way that continues to challenge and inspire. Standing among the stones, one is struck not only by the ingenuity of the builders, but also by the enduring mystery. What secrets of time, observation, and ritual remain encoded within this ancient observatory, and how many insights, lost to the millennia, are waiting quietly for those who will study, observe, and reflect. From the elevated granite platforms of Kokino, where ancient observers once traced the movement of the sun and moon across the Macedonian sky, we now travel southeast to the windswept semi-desert of Azerbaijan. Here, amid rolling hills carved by millennia of erosion and dotted with volcanic outcrops, lies Gobustan, an archaeological landscape where stone and time converge in ways both astonishing and enigmatic. Gobustan is famed for its rock art, petroglyphs, and cave shelters, but scattered across this ancient terrain are hundreds of mysterious stone structures, each whispering of human activity long before written history. The first impression of the Gobustan stone structures is one of deliberate pattern amidst apparent chaos. Circular and oval formations rise slightly from the earth, their low walls constructed from locally sourced stone, forming enclosures, platforms, and possible dwellings. Some appear simple, mere rings of rock, while others are more elaborate, with multiple concentric circles, carefully placed stones suggesting entrances, and alignments that hint at functional or symbolic intent. In the soft light of dawn, the stones cast elongated shadows that accentuate their shape and arrangement, drawing the eye along patterns that seem almost intentional, yet whose meaning remains elusive. Archaeological evidence dates many of these structures to between 5000 and 1000 BCE, situating them within the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age. Excavations have revealed traces of hearths, tools, and occasional human remains, suggesting that these stone formations were more than mere markers on the landscape. Some may have served as dwellings or animal pens, others as ceremonial or communal spaces. Yet the exact function of many structures remains unclear. Why were they built in such proximity to one another, and why do some enclosures appear precisely aligned with distant hills or depressions in the terrain? Were these alignments practical, astronomical, ritual, or some combination of all three? One of the most striking aspects of Gobustan is the relationship between the stone structures and the surrounding natural landscape. Rolling hills, escarpments, and volcanic formations create sightlines and vantage points that seem too precise to be coincidental. From certain structures, distant horizons line up with the rising or setting sun at solstices or with particular peaks, suggesting that the builders possessed an acute awareness of the natural rhythms of the land. Could these enclosures have been part of a system for tracking time, seasons, or migratory patterns of animals? Or were the alignments symbolic, connecting human activity to the sacred geography of the region? The construction of the stone enclosures is remarkable in its simplicity, yet deliberate in execution. Stones, often unshaped beyond basic selection and placement, are arranged to form coherent structures that endure centuries of wind, rain, and occasional flooding. Some circles incorporate depressions that may have held posts or markers, while others are divided into sectors, perhaps reflecting social divisions, ritual spaces, or storage areas. How did these early communities coordinate labor and knowledge to build structures so persistent yet subtle in the landscape? And what intangible knowledge guided decisions about placement, size, and orientation? Fringe interpretations and speculative theories abound. Some researchers suggest Gobustan's stone structures were designed as proto-astronomical observatories, similar in intent to Kokino, marking the passage of the sun, moon, or stars. Others propose that the enclosures served as ritual spaces, their circular forms reflecting cosmological or spiritual symbolism shared across the ancient Near East. A few have even argued for links to nomadic migration patterns, with the structures serving as temporary settlements or animal corrals. Each hypothesis is tantalizing, yet none can fully account for the diversity, distribution, and enduring precision of the formations. Walking among the stone rings today, one is struck by the juxtaposition of scale and subtlety. The low walls rise just above knee height, yet their patterns and alignments convey an unmistakable sense of intent. The surrounding hills and volcanic outcrops frame the site like natural sentinels, enhancing the impression of design integrated with the landscape. Wind rustles through sparse vegetation, carrying dust and the faint aroma of sun-baked stone. Every rock, every circle, every faint terrace invites reflection, teasing the imagination to reconstruct human presence across the millennia. Despite decades of study, the Gobustan stone structures remain enigmatic. Were they primarily practical, ritualistic, or astronomical? How much knowledge, observation, and coordination was required to achieve such durable patterns without written records or advanced tools? And what stories of daily life, belief, and social organization are hidden beneath the stones, obscured by time and sediment? These questions linger, offering no definitive answers but inviting the curious to engage, observe, and wonder. As the sun dips behind the distant ridges, casting elongated shadows across circular enclosures and jagged volcanic outcrops, Gobustan exudes a quiet majesty. The stone structures endure as monuments to human presence, ingenuity, and contemplation, bridging millennia in silence. Standing amid these rings and terraces, one is reminded that even the simplest arrangements of stone can carry profound meaning. And as we peer across the landscape, tracing sightlines from one formation to the next, the question remains: how much of Gobistan's knowledge, ritual, and observation has survived the passage of time, and how many secrets, still encoded in stone, lie waiting for patient eyes to uncover them? From the rolling semi-desert of Gobistan, where low stone circles mark centuries of human observation and ritual, we journey southward across continents and deserts to the highlands of Ethiopia. Here, amid undulating plains and grassy hills, lies Tia, one of Africa's most enigmatic archaeological landscapes. Scattered across this fertile terrain are nearly 40 standing stones, monolithic stelae, each carved with mysterious symbols and towering silently above the earth. At first glance, the field seems simple: upright stones in small clusters, weathered by sun, wind, and rain. Yet closer observation reveals an intricacy and deliberation that hints at a complex culture long vanished from the historical record. The stelae vary in size, some modest at a few meters in height, others rising imposingly above the grassland. Many are adorned with intricate engravings, geometric patterns, concentric circles, lattice-like motifs, and depictions of swords or other objects whose meaning remains uncertain. Each carving is executed with care, its grooves etched into hard volcanic rock, demonstrating the skill and effort required to create lasting impressions. As sunlight shifts over the plain, shadows ripple across the carvings, bringing patterns to life and offering fleeting glimpses of their intended effect, perhaps ritual, symbolic, or mnemonic. Archaeologists date Tia to roughly the 12th to 15th centuries CE, placing it within the late prehistoric and early historical periods of the Horn of Africa. The stelae are generally interpreted as grave markers, memorializing the dead in a society whose written records are sparse or absent. Excavations around several stelae have revealed burials, confirming that the field functioned, at least in part, as a necropolis. Yet questions remain. Why this particular configuration of stones? Why these specific carvings? And how does the field relate to broader social, spiritual, or astronomical systems? Some stones appear deliberately arranged in lines or clusters, suggesting purposeful orientation, yet the rationale behind these alignments is still debated. The artistic motifs themselves provoke intrigue. Concentric circles and geometric shapes dominate the carvings, echoing symbolic forms found in disparate cultures worldwide. Are these purely decorative, or do they encode ritual knowledge, clan identity, or cosmological concepts? The depictions of swords or daggers, etched deeply into certain stelae, suggest both martial significance and ceremonial importance. Could the carvings represent lineage, authority, or the commemoration of notable deeds? Or might they encode knowledge of seasonal cycles, celestial events, or local spiritual beliefs, now obscured by the passage of centuries? The ambiguity of meaning is central to the enduring mystery of Tia. The construction of the stelae is remarkable in its precision and persistence. Each stone was quarried from local volcanic rock, transported and erected upright, requiring significant planning, labor, and communal effort. The decision to engrave motifs into stone rather than more perishable materials signals an intention to endure, a desire for memory and symbolism to persist across generations. How did the communities responsible for Tia coordinate such undertakings? What motivated them to invest so much effort in a field that remains striking in its simplicity yet profound in its silent presence? Fringe interpretations have emerged alongside mainstream archaeological explanations. Some suggest that the stones served not only as grave markers, but also as markers of territorial boundaries or sacred landscapes. Others propose astronomical or ritual alignments, observing solstices, lunar cycles, or the passage of celestial bodies across the highland sky. Comparisons with other megalithic sites, from the stone circles of Europe to the stelae fields of Sudan and the Horn of Africa, raise questions about shared cultural practices or convergent solutions to commemorating the dead and marking the land. Was Tia an isolated phenomenon, or part of a broader, interconnected tradition of symbolic landscape creation? Visiting Tia today, the site is suffused with quiet majesty. Grass sweeps over the earth, wind ripples across the stones, and the highland sky stretches uninterrupted above. Each stela seems to observe the surrounding plains, standing as a sentinel of memory, ritual, and human endeavor. The engravings, weathered yet still legible, invite contemplation, urging one to imagine the lives, beliefs, and intentions of those who erected them. Despite centuries of erosion, the stelae convey a sense of deliberate design, social organization, and symbolic awareness. Yet for all its clarity of form, Tia retains an aura of unsolved mystery. How did its creators select, arrange, and inscribe each stone? What meanings, social, spiritual, astronomical, or political, did they intend to convey? And what else might remain hidden beneath the soil, lost to time or obscured by vegetation awaiting discovery? Each stela is simultaneously a monument and a question, a marker of human ingenuity that resists full interpretation. As the sun lowers behind the distant highlands, casting long shadows across the carved stones, Tia exudes a quiet power. The field endures as a testament to human presence, ritual, and artistry, linking the living to the dead and the earth to the cosmos. Standing among the stelae, one is confronted with both awe and curiosity. What knowledge, practice, or story remains encoded in these silent monoliths, and how many secrets of the past, ritual, social, or cosmic, have been preserved in stone, waiting for patient eyes and careful hands to uncover them? From the highlands of Ethiopia, where the Tia stelae quietly mark human presence, ritual, and memory, we now journey across continents and seas to the sun-baked hills of southeastern Spain. Here lies Los Millares, one of Europe's earliest and most enigmatic fortified settlements, perched strategically on a gentle rise above the Andarax River Valley. Even from a distance, the site commands attention. Concentric stone walls rise from the earth in sweeping arcs, punctuated by bastions and gateways that hint at a community deeply invested in defense, organization, and the projection of power. Los Millares is remarkable in scale. Excavations reveal a settlement surrounded by at least 4 concentric walls, the outermost extending hundreds of meters around the central village. Towers punctuate the fortifications at regular intervals, their stonework precise, with walls built from carefully shaped stones that have survived millennia of weathering. Within these defenses, clusters of circular and oval dwellings suggest domestic life, while central enclosures may have served as communal, ritual, or administrative spaces. The juxtaposition of domestic intimacy and monumental fortification speaks to a society both organized and conscious of external threats, or of projecting power beyond its borders. Archaeologists date Los Millares to roughly 3,200 to 2,200 BCE, situating it firmly within the Copper Age. The site is recognized for its technological sophistication. The builders employed advanced masonry techniques, carefully stacked stones without mortar, and arranged walls and towers with an understanding of strength, stability, and spatial control. Artifacts, including copper tools, pottery, and symbolic objects, suggest a complex society, one capable of coordinating labor, organizing resources, and maintaining both domestic and defensive architecture over generations. Yet even with extensive study, the precise social, political, and ritual functions of the fortifications remain elusive. The layout of Los Millares provokes further intrigue. The concentric walls are not uniform. Angles shift, bastions jut at calculated points, and entrances appear intentionally restricted. Such features may have been defensive, designed to slow or channel potential attackers, yet some arrangements suggest additional symbolic or ceremonial purpose. Were the walls purely functional, or did they serve as physical manifestations of social hierarchy, spiritual protection, or territorial identity? The intersection of practical and symbolic remains unclear, leaving scholars to speculate on the motivations and worldview of the builders. Even within the interior, questions abound. Dwellings vary in size, with some clustered around central courtyards or larger communal spaces. Certain stones and platforms seem deliberately oriented, though the logic behind these alignments is uncertain. Could these patterns reflect social organization, ritual practice, or observation of celestial events? Were communal spaces sites of governance, worship, or both? And how did such a complex society sustain itself, coordinating labor and resources in an age prior to writing or advanced record-keeping? Fringe interpretations add further dimension to the mystery of Los Millares. Some researchers have speculated that the fortifications were designed with symbolic cosmological intent, aligning with solar or lunar events, or even serving as markers of sacred space. Comparisons with other contemporaneous settlements across the Iberian Peninsula suggest that Los Millares may have been part of a network of proto-urban centers, sharing architectural knowledge, ritual practices, or political influence. Yet the absence of written records means the precise nature of these connections, and the cultural or ideological rationale behind the fortifications remains largely speculative. Visiting Los Millares today, the scale of human effort is striking. Massive walls, weathered and pockmarked by time, stretch across hillsides, while the remains of dwellings and internal enclosures suggest a vibrant, densely organized community. The site conveys a sense of permanence and intention. These are not haphazard arrangements of stone, but carefully considered structures designed to endure, both physically and symbolically. Standing among the walls and towers, one is acutely aware of the labor, coordination, and knowledge required to erect such fortifications in an era of minimal technology. Yet, for all its clarity of form, Los Millares retains an aura of mystery. Why was this particular hill chosen, overlooking the valley below? To what extent were the walls defensive, symbolic, or ceremonial? How did the inhabitants balance the practical needs of life, labor, and defense with the social, political, and perhaps spiritual functions embedded in the architecture? And what other secrets, burials, artifacts, or traces of ritual might remain hidden beneath the soil, obscured by centuries of natural and human activity? As the sun sets across the Andarax Valley, casting long shadows over concentric walls and weathered towers, Los Millares exudes a quiet, enduring majesty. The fortifications speak of a people capable of complex thought, organization, and labor, yet they also provoke reflection on what has been lost to time. Standing amid the remains, one is reminded that even the most tangible structures, stones carefully stacked and arranged by human hands, can hold meanings that elude full understanding. And as the wind sweeps across the hills, whispering through the ruins, the question lingers. How much of Los Millares' story, of its knowledge, power, and culture, remains encoded in stone, waiting to be deciphered by those patient enough to study, observe, and imagine? As we leave the well-trodden paths of more familiar ancient sites, our journey takes us to the rugged landscapes of southern Portugal, where the Zambujal fortified complex rises quietly from the rolling plains of the Lisbon region. From a distance, the remnants of walls and terraces appear almost modest, hidden amid the pale greens and earthy browns of the countryside. Yet, for those who step closer, the scale and complexity of this early Bronze Age settlement become impossible to ignore. The stone foundations, some still standing several meters high, form a labyrinthine pattern that hints at a society both organized and sophisticated, capable of monumental construction long before the advent of modern engineering. Archaeologists have long studied Zambujal, dating its origins to around 3000 BCE, placing it firmly within the Chalcolithic period, a time when copper was first being worked alongside stone tools. The complex itself sprawls across a rocky hilltop with concentric walls enclosing terraces, dwellings, and storage areas. Excavations reveal a remarkable attention to defensive architecture. Walls were thick, carefully layered, and punctuated by strategically positioned gateways. Some experts believe this level of fortification suggests not only concern for external threats, but also a society with considerable resources and organizational capacity. The scale of labor required to quarry, transport, and assemble these stones would have demanded coordination, planning, and a form of communal governance that continues to fascinate historians. Yet, beyond the conventional archaeological narrative, questions begin to emerge. How did a community so long ago develop the technical know-how to erect structures of such precision and durability? The stones themselves, some weighing several tons, fit together with remarkable accuracy, suggesting methods and knowledge that, in some ways, remain obscure. How were these massive blocks moved across uneven terrain without the wheel or draft animals commonly credited with such feats? Scholars have proposed theories ranging from simple yet ingenious log-rolling techniques to the use of rudimentary pulleys or sledges, but no definitive evidence has been found to confirm any single method. It is in this intersection of known and unknown that the true intrigue of Zambujal begins. Inside the walls, the layout of the complex continues to confound. Residential quarters and communal spaces are arranged in a manner that seems both practical and symbolic. Certain terraces align with specific solar events, hinting at a cosmological or ritual dimension to the settlement's design. Could these alignments reflect an early understanding of astronomy, embedded into the very architecture of everyday life? Some researchers suggest the complex functioned as more than a fortress or village. It may have been a center for trade, governance, or religious practice, perhaps even a pilgrimage site attracting people from distant regions. Yet, despite decades of excavation, the precise purpose of many structures remains elusive, and large portions of the site are still buried beneath centuries of soil and vegetation. Adding to the enigma, artifacts recovered from Zambujal display a blend of the ordinary and the extraordinary. Pottery shards bear intricate geometric patterns, while stone tools and ornaments hint at both domestic utility and ceremonial significance. Among these finds are fragments whose craftsmanship seems unusually sophisticated for the era, raising questions about the level of technical and artistic skill achieved by its builders. Some speculate that Zambujal was part of a network of advanced communities across the Iberian Peninsula, sharing knowledge and cultural practices that we have yet to fully understand. Others wonder if its innovations arose independently, a testament to human ingenuity thriving in relative isolation. The fortifications themselves invite further speculation. Unlike many contemporary settlements, Zambujal exhibits multiple layers of walls, some rising on terraces that follow the natural contours of the hill. Was this purely for defense, or did it serve an additional, perhaps symbolic purpose? Certain walls form patterns that, when viewed from above, seem almost deliberate in their geometric precision. Circles within circles, passages that lead to nowhere, platforms whose function remains mysterious. Could these features have been designed to communicate something to those approaching from a distance, or to structure social life within? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. As researchers probe deeper, even the settlement's disappearance from history raises questions. By the late Bronze Age, Zambujal was abandoned, its walls gradually eroded by wind and rain, its terraces reclaimed by nature. Why did this seemingly prosperous and strategically positioned community vanish? Some propose environmental pressures, such as soil depletion or climatic shifts, may have made continued habitation unsustainable. Others speculate on social or political upheavals, perhaps conflicts with neighboring groups. Yet, no evidence conclusively explains why Zambujal, so robust and enduring in its architecture, ceased to thrive. It is as though the site was deliberately left to the elements, fading into the landscape but refusing to be forgotten. What truly captures the imagination, however, is the lingering sense of mystery embedded in the stones themselves. Each wall, each terrace, seems to whisper of intentions and knowledge that have slipped through the cracks of history. We are left with glimpses: a carefully carved doorway, a terrace aligned with the rising sun, a fragment of pottery whose meaning is lost. Each fragment invites interpretation, yet the full story remains just beyond reach. The site challenges us to reconcile what we know about early human societies with what seems almost impossible for their time. How did they achieve such feats of engineering? What drove them to build so meticulously, and why did they ultimately leave it all behind? As we stand on the edge of Zambujal, looking across its weathered walls and uneven terraces, the wind carrying the faint scent of wild herbs and dust, the mind cannot help but wander. Were the builders of Zambujal merely practical, concerned with defense and survival, or did they envision something far greater, embedding ideas and knowledge into stone that we are only beginning to glimpse? Are there layers yet undiscovered, secrets still hidden beneath the soil, waiting to rewrite what we think we know about this early civilization? The mystery of Zambujal remains alive, not only in the artifacts and walls that endure, but in the questions that persist. It reminds us that history is not merely a record of what we can prove. It is also a landscape of the unknown, inviting us to look closer, think deeper, and wonder. And as we continue our journey through the ancient world, we carry with us the enduring image of Zambujal, a fortress of stone and shadow, standing quietly in Portugal, guarding its secrets across the millennia, and challenging us to imagine what might still lie hidden within its walls. From the quiet echoes of the last site we explored, our journey continues westward, into a rugged landscape where stone, silence, and time seem locked in an uneasy truce. Here the terrain rises sharply from the surrounding plains, forming a natural bastion of rock and earth. At first glance, it appears almost accidental, as though nature alone sculpted this elevated ridge. But as the light shifts and the details emerge, it becomes clear that this place was shaped by deliberate human hands, guided by intentions we are still struggling to fully understand. This is La Bastida, an ancient settlement perched in what is now southeastern Spain, overlooking the Guadalentine River Valley. The hilltop is steep, unforgiving, and commanding. From its summit, the surrounding land unfolds in every direction, offering clear lines of sight that stretch for kilometers. Even before archaeology enters the picture, the location itself tells a story of vigilance, control, and perhaps fear. The stones of La Bastida are not monumental in the way pyramids or temples are. There are no towering columns or ornate carvings. Instead, what draws attention here is something subtler, yet deeply unsettling: a sophisticated system of defensive structures dating back more than 4,000 years, to the early Bronze Age. Long before the rise of classical civilizations in the Mediterranean, someone here was preparing for conflict on a scale that feels unexpectedly modern. As excavations began in the late 20th century, archaeologists quickly realized that La Bastida was no ordinary prehistoric village. Thick stone walls encircle the settlement, reinforced by bastions and narrow gateways designed to funnel movement and restrict access. Some of these walls reach several meters in height and width, built with a precision that suggests advanced planning and engineering knowledge. This was not improvised defense. It was calculated. At the heart of the mystery lies the Argaric culture, the Bronze Age society believed to have built and occupied La Bastida between roughly 2,200 and 1,550 BCE. For decades, the Argaric people were known primarily through burial practices and domestic remains. But La Bastida forced a re-evaluation. Why would a society, often described as agrarian and regionally focused, invest so heavily in fortifications? The mainstream explanation points to social stratification and competition. According to this view, the Argaric world was divided into hierarchical communities, with elites controlling resources such as metal production, farmland, and trade routes. La Bastida, strategically placed, may have served as a regional power center, its walls a visible assertion of authority, meant to deter rivals and protect stored wealth. Yet the scale of the defenses complicates this interpretation. Some of the walls appear overbuilt for simple deterrence. The entrance system, in particular, raises questions. A narrow-angled corridor forces anyone entering to slow down and turn repeatedly, exposing their unshielded side to defenders above. This design is strikingly similar to fortification techniques seen much later in the eastern Mediterranean, including Mycenaean citadels and even Near Eastern strongholds. How did such architectural concepts appear here, so early, and seemingly without precedent in Western Europe? One possibility is long-distance contact. Trade networks in the Bronze Age were more extensive than once believed, carrying metals, amber, and ideas across vast distances. Some researchers suggest that knowledge of fortification design may have traveled along these routes, transmitted not through conquest but through observation and adaptation. La Bastida, in this sense, could represent an early experiment, a local society adopting and refining foreign concepts to suit its own needs, but others are not convinced this fully explains what we see. The density of fortifications at La Bastida is unusual even by later standards. The settlement appears almost militarized, as though defense was not a secondary concern, but a defining feature of daily life. Houses are tightly packed within the walls, leaving little open space. Movement seems controlled, internal pathways narrow and purposeful. This was a community built with containment in mind, not just of outsiders, but perhaps of its own inhabitants. Why would a Bronze Age society live as though under constant threat? Environmental stress offers another explanation. Around the time La Bastida flourished, the region experienced periods of climatic instability. Droughts, soil depletion, and resource scarcity may have intensified competition between neighboring groups. In such a scenario, fortified settlements would become not just advantageous, but essential. The walls of La Bastida might reflect a world where survival depended on preparedness, where violence was not episodic, but expected. Still, this does not fully account for the sophistication of the engineering. Some of the defensive walls incorporate sloping bases and layered stonework designed to absorb impact and prevent collapse. These features imply an understanding of structural stress and long-term durability. The builders were not merely stacking stones. They were thinking in terms of force, pressure, and resilience. For a society without written records or known mathematical treatises, this level of architectural foresight feels almost out of place. This is where more speculative interpretations begin to surface. A small number of researchers have suggested that La Bastida represents evidence of a lost or underestimated technological tradition within prehistoric Europe, one that developed independently and was later forgotten. According to this idea, the Argaric culture may have possessed organizational and engineering capabilities far beyond what is typically attributed to Bronze Age societies in the region. Rather than borrowing ideas, they may have been innovators, responding to unique pressures with equally unique solutions. Others go further, proposing that La Bastida was not merely defensive, but symbolic. The walls may have served as psychological instruments, reinforcing social order through architecture. Living within such imposing structures could shape behavior, instill obedience, and normalize hierarchy. In this interpretation, the true function of the fortifications was internal control rather than external defense. And then there are the more fringe theories, whispered rather than proclaimed. Some point to the sudden emergence of La Bastida's defenses, noting the lack of clear developmental stages leading up to them. The fortifications appear almost fully formed, without obvious experimental predecessors nearby. Could this suggest the arrival of outside specialists, builders or strategists whose origins lie beyond the archaeological record, or knowledge transferred in ways we no longer understand? There is no evidence to support extraordinary claims, and most scholars caution against reading too much into absence. Archaeology, after all, is shaped as much by what has not survived as by what has. And yet the questions persist, lingering in the spaces between stones. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of La Bastida is what happened next. Around the mid-2nd millennium BCE, the settlement was abandoned. The reasons remain unclear. There is no definitive layer of destruction, no widespread signs of massacre or fire. Life here simply stopped. The walls, once so carefully maintained, were left to weather and erode. The watchful vantage point fell silent. Did the defenses fail? Or did the world that required them cease to exist? Standing among the ruins today, it is difficult not to feel that La Bastida represents something transitional, a moment when human societies were redefining power, fear, and protection. It sits at the threshold between small, open communities and the fortified cities that would later dominate the ancient world. And yet, it arrived there early, almost prematurely, as though anticipating conflicts that history tells us were still centuries away. Was La Bastida a response to dangers we have yet to identify? A warning etched in stone from a forgotten chapter of human struggle? Or simply a reminder that our ancestors, even in deep prehistory, were capable of complexity that continues to challenge our assumptions? As the sun dips behind the surrounding hills, the shadows stretch across the broken walls, emphasizing their angles and intent. The stones remain, patient and unyielding, offering no final answers. And perhaps that is their purpose, to stand as silent witnesses, urging us to look closer, to question more deeply, and to accept that some structures are not just built to defend against enemies, but against forgetting. What then was La Bastida truly defending? And from whom? As the previous journey fades, stone corridors dissolving into shadow and unanswered questions lingering in the air, we drift across the vastness of the Pacific. The ocean becomes a connective tissue, linking distant civilizations that never met, yet seem to share an instinct for monument, ritual, and meaning. It is here, on the edge of sea and sky, that another ancient presence waits quietly to be noticed. At the southeastern corner of the island of Raiatea, in French Polynesia, the land narrows and flattens before yielding to the lagoon. The air is heavy with salt and humidity, thick with birdsong and the low rhythm of waves breaking against coral. Black volcanic stones lie stacked with deliberate care, forming terraces and platforms that feel both grounded and ceremonial. Vines creep across their surfaces. Roots probe the gaps between stones. Nature has not reclaimed this place, but it has learned to coexist with it. This is Marae Taputapuatea. At first glance, the sight does not overwhelm. There are no towering pyramids, no colossal statues staring down intruders. Instead, the power of Taputapuatea is subtle, almost restrained. Low walls outline a vast rectangular enclosure. Upright stones, some smooth, some jagged, stand like silent witnesses. At the center lies a raised platform paved with coral slabs, bleached pale by centuries of sun. Everything about the site suggests intention. Nothing appears random. And yet, its full purpose remains elusive. Taputapuatea is considered the most important marae, a sacred ceremonial complex in Polynesian history. According to oral traditions, it was the spiritual and political heart of a vast oceanic network that stretched across thousands of kilometers. Hawaii, Aotearoa, New Zealand, Rapa Nui, the Cook Islands. Legends say that chiefs, navigators, and priests from across the Pacific journeyed here, guided by stars and currents, to participate in rituals that bound the Polynesian world together. How did a site on a single island become a center for an entire oceanic civilization? Mainstream archaeology offers part of the answer. Radiocarbon dating suggests that Taputapuatea was established around the 11th century, though it likely evolved over time, expanding in phases as Raiatea's influence grew. The marae was dedicated to Oro, a powerful god associated with war, fertility, and chiefly authority. Rituals performed here legitimized rulers, consecrated voyages, and sealed alliances. In this sense, Taputapuatea functioned not only as a religious site, but as a geopolitical one, a place where power was negotiated through ceremony rather than conquest. Yet, even within these accepted explanations, questions remain. The precision of the layout is striking. The main enclosure aligns closely with the cardinal directions. Certain stones appear deliberately placed to frame sightlines toward the ocean, the mountains, and the sky. Some researchers suggest that Taputapuatea may have functioned as a kind of navigational or astronomical reference point, a terrestrial mirror of the heavens used to teach and preserve celestial knowledge. Polynesian navigation, after all, remains one of humanity's great achievements. Long before compasses or sextants, navigators crossed open ocean using only stars, swells, winds, birds, and memory. Knowledge was encoded in chants, stories, and rituals. Could Taputapuatea have been more than symbolic? Could it have served as a training ground, a place where cosmic order was mapped onto stone? Standing within the marae, one cannot ignore the sense of orientation. The stones seem to guide the eye outward, beyond the physical boundaries of the site, toward the horizon, toward the unknown. Local traditions deepen the mystery. Taputapuatea is said to be the place where the gods first descended to the world of humans. Some stories describe it as a navel of the earth, a point of origin from which life, authority, and knowledge radiated outward. In these accounts, Raiatea is not just another island, but the ancestral homeland of the Polynesian peoples themselves. Myth and archaeology intersect uncomfortably here. Migration models based on linguistics and genetics suggest multiple waves of settlement, complex patterns of movement, and regional development. And yet, the oral histories persist with remarkable consistency, naming Taputapuatea as a central source. Is this symbolic ancestry, or a cultural memory of something more literal, now blurred by time? Then there are the rituals. Historical accounts recorded after European contact describe ceremonies at Taputapuatea that involved human sacrifice, strict taboos, and prolonged periods of silence and fasting. Certain areas of the marae were forbidden to commoners. Others could only be entered at specific times, under specific conditions. Violating these rules was believed to bring catastrophic consequences, not just for the individual, but for the entire community. What exactly were these rituals meant to accomplish? From a conventional perspective, they reinforced social hierarchy and religious authority. Fear and reverence maintained order. But some researchers have wondered whether these rites served additional purposes: psychological, social, even physiological. The intense sensory deprivation, chanting, and alignment with celestial events may have induced altered states of consciousness. In such states, participants reported visions, encounters with ancestors, or communication with the divine. Were these experiences purely symbolic, or did they shape decision-making in ways we no longer fully understand? More speculative interpretations push further. Some fringe theorists propose that Taputapuatea was part of a global network of ancient sacred sites, connected not by roads or empires, but by shared astronomical principles. They point to similarities in orientation, ritual function, and mythological language between Polynesian Marae, Mesoamerican temples, and even megalithic sites in Europe. Is this coincidence, a reflection of universal human responses to sky and landscape, or evidence of a deeper lost knowledge system that once spanned continents and oceans? Mainstream scholars urge caution. Cultural parallels do not require direct contact, they argue. Humans everywhere look to the stars, mark solstices, and ritualize power. And yet, Taputapuatea's sheer reach, its influence across an ocean covering a third of the planet, remains difficult to fully explain through social factors alone. There is also the question of silence. Unlike some other ancient sites, Taputapuatea does not come with detailed written records carved in stone. Its history lives primarily in oral tradition, passed down through generations, reshaped by memory and performance. When European missionaries arrived in the 18th and 19th centuries, many rituals were suppressed and knowledge was lost or deliberately hidden. What was never meant to be shared? Elders speak carefully about the site even today. Some knowledge, they say, is not gone, only sleeping. Certain stones are still considered active. Certain nights still matter. Visitors often report an unusual atmosphere, a heaviness, a clarity, a sense of being observed. Skeptics attribute this to suggestion and setting. Believers say the land remembers. In recent decades, Taputapuatea has undergone restoration and was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for its cultural and historical significance. The stones have been stabilized, pathways cleared, interpretive signs installed, and yet, in formalizing the site, something ineffable seems to resist categorization, because even now, standing at Taputapuatea, as the sun sets and the lagoon darkens, the site does not feel finished. It feels paused. Was this truly the center of a world-spanning civilization held together by ritual and star knowledge? Or was it something more? A focal point for ideas, beliefs, and practices we have yet to decode. Did its builders understand aspects of navigation, psychology, or cosmology that modern frameworks struggle to recognize? Or are we projecting mystery onto a place whose meaning was once perfectly clear to those who stood here? The stones do not answer. They endure. And as the waves continue their slow, eternal rhythm against the shore, one is left with the sense that Taputapuatea is not simply a relic of the past. It is a reminder, quiet, unresolved, that some chapters of human history were written in ways we no longer know how to read. What then might still lie hidden in the spaces between these stones, waiting for the right moment or the right understanding to speak again? As the journey moves onward from one enigma to the next, the landscape itself seems to shift. Subtly, almost deliberately, guiding us toward another place where history feels unfinished. The questions raised by earlier discoveries do not fade here. Instead, they linger in the thin Andean air, drawing us south toward a quiet plateau overlooking the dark waters of Lake Umayo. At first, the site appears almost unreal. Rising from the rolling grasslands of southern Peru, a series of tall, cylindrical stone towers stand silhouetted against the sky. They are known as the Silastani Burial Towers, or Chulpas, and they occupy a high peninsula where the wind moves freely and the horizon seems endlessly distant. The light here changes quickly. Clouds drift low, shadows stretch long. and the stones themselves seem to absorb centuries of silence. Even before their purpose is understood, the towers command attention. They do not blend into the landscape. They announce themselves. The chulpas vary in height, some reaching nearly 40 feet, their stone surfaces carefully fitted together in concentric rings. From a distance, they resemble sentinels, watchful, deliberate, and strangely out of place. Up close, their construction becomes even more striking. Massive blocks of stone, some weighing several tons, are cut with surprising precision and stacked without mortar. The outer walls curve gently inward as they rise, creating a subtle taper that adds both elegance and stability. It is craftsmanship that suggests planning, knowledge, and intent far beyond what the remote setting might imply. Silistani is traditionally associated with the Kola people, an Aymara-speaking civilization that flourished in this region before the rise of the Inca Empire. According to mainstream archaeological understanding, these towers served as funerary monuments, built to house the remains of elite individuals, nobles, priests, or rulers, along with offerings meant to accompany them into the afterlife. The deceased were typically placed in a fetal position, wrapped in textiles, and sealed within the structure. In many towers, small openings face east, toward the rising sun, symbolically aligning death with rebirth. This explanation, on its surface, is coherent and supported by historical accounts and excavated remains. Burial towers, after all, are not unique to Silistani. Variations of chulpas appear across the Andean highlands, suggesting a shared cultural tradition surrounding death and ancestry. Yet as researchers and visitors alike have noted, Silistani stands apart. The scale, precision, and architectural sophistication of these towers exceed what is seen at most comparable sites. One of the most frequently cited examples is the so-called Tower of the Lizard, named for a carved reptilian figure embedded into its stonework. The tower's blocks fit together so seamlessly that even today, a knife blade cannot be slipped between them. This level of stone masonry invites immediate comparison to other enigmatic Andean sites. Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, where polygonal stone fitting reaches an almost uncanny degree of accuracy. The question arises naturally: how was this achieved? Conventional archaeology points to skilled labor, stone hammers, abrasion techniques, and generations of accumulated knowledge. The Kola, and later the Inca, are known to have possessed sophisticated engineering practices, even without metal tools or the wheel. In this view, the towers of Silistani represent the pinnacle of local craftsmanship, the result of communal effort and cultural reverence for the dead. Yet, there are inconsistencies that complicate this narrative. Some towers appear unfinished, their lower sections perfectly formed while their upper portions remain rough or incomplete. Others show signs of damage not easily explained by time or erosion alone. In certain cases, the stonework at Silistani appears even more refined than that found in later Inca constructions, raising the possibility that the site predates Inca influence, or that the Inca themselves inherited it from an earlier, now lost civilization. This idea, while speculative, has gained quiet traction among alternative researchers. They point to oral traditions suggesting that the Inca did not build everything they claimed, but rather restored and repurposed structures left behind by predecessors they referred to as the ancients. In this context, Silistani becomes less a singular cultural achievement and more a fragment of a deeper, obscured timeline, one in which advanced stoneworking knowledge existed long before written history in the region. The logistics of construction also invite scrutiny. The stone used in many of the towers does not appear to originate from the immediate vicinity. Transporting multi-ton blocks across uneven terrain at this altitude would have required coordination on a remarkable scale. Without draft animals capable of hauling such weight, and without wheeled vehicles, the process remains difficult to fully reconstruct. Ramps, rollers, manpower, all are plausible, yet none feel entirely sufficient to explain the precision and consistency observed. Then there is the question of purpose. While the funerary explanation is widely accepted, not all towers contain human remains. Some were found empty, others held remains inconsistent with elite burials. This has led to alternative interpretations suggesting that the chulpas may have served ceremonial, astronomical, or symbolic functions beyond burial alone. Their placement, orientation, and relationship to the surrounding landscape hint at a broader cosmological significance, one tied to the cycles of the sun, the stars, and the ancestors believed to watch over the living. More fringe theories push even further, proposing that Silistani was part of a network of energy centers or sacred sites aligned across the Andes. Proponents of this idea point to the site's commanding position above Lake Umayo, a body of water often associated with reflection, liminality, and spiritual transition in Andean belief systems. In this interpretation, the towers become less like tombs and more like conduits, structures meant to bridge worlds rather than simply mark death. To be clear, such theories remain unproven, resting more on pattern recognition and symbolic interpretation than on empirical evidence. Still, their persistence speaks to something undeniable. Silistani resists closure. Each explanation, no matter how carefully constructed, seems to leave something unresolved. Standing among the towers today, the silence feels intentional. The wind moves through the grass, birds circle overhead, and the stones remain unmoved, indifferent to the centuries that have passed. There are no inscriptions to guide interpretation, no definitive records to settle debate. Only form, placement, and presence. Perhaps that is the enduring power of Silistani. It exists at the intersection of what we think we know and what we cannot fully explain. It challenges assumptions about technological capability, cultural continuity, and the linear progression of history. It asks us to consider the possibility that knowledge can be lost, that civilizations can rise, fall, and vanish, leaving behind monuments that outlast memory itself. As we move on from this windswept plateau, the towers remain behind, watching the lake as they always have. Were they simply graves for the honored dead, or something more complex, markers of a worldview we no longer fully grasp? And if their builders possessed skills that still puzzle us today, what else might lie undiscovered beneath the soil of the Andes, waiting quietly for the right moment to be seen? From the cold, wind-swept heights of the Andes, the journey continues northward, descending slowly from stone towers built for the dead into a very different landscape, where heat, rain, and dense vegetation reclaim almost everything left behind by human hands. The silence that followed us from Silistani does not disappear here. It changes character. It becomes humid, layered, alive. And within it, another mystery waits, partially hidden beneath centuries of soil and forest growth. Deep in the Caribbean lowlands of Costa Rica, at the base of the Turrialba volcano, lies Guayabo. At first glance, it is easy to miss. The rainforest presses in from all sides, vines and moss draping over stone, as if nature itself were trying to soften the outlines of something ancient. Mist clings to the ground in the early hours, and the air carries the sound of insects, birds, and distant water. Yet beneath this living canopy is the most complex pre-Columbian archaeological site ever discovered in Costa Rica, a place that suggests an advanced society whose story remains largely untold. Guayabo was first brought to wider attention in the late 19th century, but systematic excavation did not begin until the mid-20th. What archaeologists uncovered challenged long-held assumptions about the region's ancient inhabitants. Rather than small, transient villages, Guayabo revealed evidence of a large, organized settlement occupied for nearly 1,000 years, from roughly 1000 BCE to 1400 CE. Stone foundations, paved roads, aqueducts, and carefully planned residential platforms emerged from the earth, hinting at a level of social and engineering sophistication rarely associated with this part of Central America. The site spans more than 50 hectares, though only a fraction has been fully excavated. Circular stone structures dominate the visible remains, broad platforms that once supported wooden buildings long since decayed in the tropical climate. These circles are connected by stone-paved pathways, some remarkably well preserved, forming a network that guides movement through the settlement. It is a layout that feels deliberate, structured, and thoughtfully integrated with the surrounding environment. Perhaps most striking is Guayabo's water management system. Stone-lined aqueducts channel rainwater from nearby springs and streams, directing it with precision across the site. Some channels run beneath roadways, others curve gently around platforms, controlling erosion and ensuring a reliable water supply even during heavy rainfall. In a region known for intense seasonal storms, this level of hydraulic planning speaks to generations of observation, experimentation, and accumulated knowledge. Mainstream archaeology interprets Guayabo as a ceremonial and political center, likely inhabited by elites, spiritual leaders, and skilled specialists. The absence of defensive walls suggests that it was not primarily a military stronghold. Instead, it may have functioned as a hub for trade, ritual, and governance, connecting coastal regions with inland communities through networks that extended far beyond modern national borders. Artifacts found at the site, including jade objects and pottery styles from distant areas, support the idea of long-distance exchange. Yet for all that has been uncovered, Guayabo remains curiously incomplete. No written language has been found. No clear burial grounds have been identified within the core site. The people who built and maintained this settlement left behind stone and silence, but little direct testimony of who they were or how they understood their world. The culture associated with Guayabo does not fit neatly into established Mesoamerican or Andean categories. It appears to occupy a liminal space, geographically and culturally, between the great civilizations to the north and south. This in-between status has made it difficult to classify, and perhaps easier to overlook. And yet, the precision of its stonework and the coherence of its urban planning challenge the notion that it was merely peripheral or derivative. One of the enduring questions centers on why Guayabo was abandoned. Around the 15th century, the site appears to have been deliberately vacated. There is little evidence of violent destruction or sudden catastrophe. Structures were not burned en masse, nor were tools and valuables left scattered as if dropped in haste. Instead, the departure seems measured, intentional, almost ritualized. Environmental explanations are often cited. Volcanic activity from Turrialba may have intensified, making long-term habitation untenable. Earthquakes, flooding, or shifts in water sources could have disrupted the delicate balance the settlement relied upon. These are plausible scenarios, consistent with the geological volatility of the region, but other interpretations linger at the edges of certainty. Some researchers have suggested that Guayabo's role as a ceremonial center may have diminished as belief systems changed, power structures shifted, or populations reorganized elsewhere. If the site's significance was symbolic as much as practical, its abandonment may reflect a transformation in worldview rather than a response to physical threat. Then there are the more speculative perspectives, ideas that arise not from artifacts alone, but from patterns, alignments, and unanswered gaps. Certain stone structures at Guayabo appear aligned with celestial events, including solstices and equinoxes. Pathways and platforms may have been positioned to correspond with solar movement or significant points on the horizon. While such alignments are subtle and debated, they raise the possibility that astronomy played a role in the settlement's design. If Guayabo functioned as a ceremonial landscape, its water channels, roads, and platforms may have held symbolic meaning beyond their practical use. Water, in many ancient cultures, was not merely a resource but a conduit between worlds, life-giving, purifying, and spiritually potent. The careful control of water at Guayabo may reflect ritual practices we can no longer fully reconstruct. Some fringe theories go further still, proposing that Guayabo was part of a broader, now lost network of advanced societies across the Americas, cultures that shared architectural principles, cosmological knowledge, or engineering techniques long before European contact. In this view, Guayabo's isolation is an illusion created by modern borders and incomplete excavation. What appears anomalous may simply be a fragment of a much larger story, still buried beneath forest and time. Such ideas remain controversial and unproven. They exist on the margins of accepted scholarship, often relying on inference rather than direct evidence. Yet their persistence underscores a deeper truth. Guayabo resists simple explanation. Each stone uncovered seems to clarify one question while raising two more. The rainforest itself complicates matters. Organic materials, wood, textiles, food remains, decay rapidly in this environment. Entire dimensions of daily life may have vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the most durable elements. What rituals were performed on these platforms? What stories were told along these roads? What sounds once filled this space where only insects now speak? Walking through Guayabo today, one senses both presence and absence. The stones feel purposeful, but the people who shaped them are unreachable. The settlement does not overwhelm with monumentality. Instead, it invites quiet attention. It feels lived in rather than imposing, intelligent rather than ostentatious, and perhaps that subtlety is part of why its mystery endures. As the forest continues to reclaim what remains uncovered, Guayabo stands as a reminder that complexity does not always announce itself loudly in history. Some of the most sophisticated human achievements leave behind only faint outlines, patterns in stone, pathways through earth, questions without names. And so, as we move forward in this exploration of ancient structures that defy easy answers, Guayabo lingers in the mind. Was it simply a regional center shaped by environment and tradition, or evidence of a deeper, interconnected past we have yet to recognize? How many more stories like this lie hidden beneath layers of soil and assumption, waiting, not to be explained away, but to be understood on their own terms?